It's January of 2022 and I'm playing Fortnite with my boys Crocker and Josh, as well as my girlfriend at the time, because we all got along super well. We'd, squat up pretty much every single day, just grind out the 40. But this particular day we'd woken up to some really sad news on Facebook. Unfortunately, a 19-year-old from our town had passed away in a car accident. We didn't know who it was, we just knew that he lived here and that he was extremely young. So, around halfway into my second game on, I get a knock on the door. Obviously I say, come in, and it's my oldest brother. He says to me that the person who passed away in the car accident was his mate, which was also the brother of a girl who I'd been friends with since I was 12 years old. So as soon as I hear that, I camp out in the bush in the game and I take my headset off and I say, no, it can't be, someone's got to be spreading rumors. And he goes to me, nah, bro, I just asked one of his mates and it's been confirmed, that's who it was. As soon as I get that confirmation, I message his sister, having been friends with her for a little while by this point, just expressing my condolences. I say, hey, if there's anything I can do, I'm here for you, Because obviously me at the time being super close with my eldest brother in particular, I couldn't quite understand the feeling of what it would be like to have a brother ripped away. I knew there would be so much pain in this poor girl's heart. So I remember later that night I was playing trios with Crocker and Josh once again, and in between games I went onto Snapchat, at which point I see a story which Josh has put up saying, expressing his condolences to the girl, saying if there's anything she needs, he's here and that sort of thing. And I always found it weird when people would do that. If you have something genuine to say to someone, why not just message them? Oh yeah, happy birthday, that sort of thing. I always found it to be like they were seeking attention for themselves, approval from others, oh yeah, you're a good person, that sort of thing. But I say to myself, you know what? Josh has always taken the piss out of people, so it's probably a good thing that he's put it up. He's finally paying respect where it's due. So the next night we get on Fortnite together once again. It's Crocker, Josh and my girlfriend all playing squads. We're having a super good time, laughing, cracking jokes. Josh is being super out of pocket as he always was. Now I just want to mention that Josh had ADHD, so he was known to say things without really thinking about it. By around our third game on, we were really getting into the flow of things, and somehow this girl's brother's passing comes up in conversation, and I say that one of his mates has started a GoFundMe. Now upon hearing this, Crocker asks me what exactly it's for, and just as I was about to answer, Josh comes out with hands down the most fucked up thing he could have possibly said at the time. I'm not going to go into detail on what it was. I just think it was majorly disrespectful. I don't want to out him on here, but as soon as I heard this, it flicked a switch in my mind. The second he said it, I did not give a fuck that we were playing a game together. We wanted to get the victory. All that shit went out the window. And I said, are you fucking serious? You're actually fucked in the head. Why would you say something like that? You're a leave the party. I just completely lose my shit, bro, because not only was this dude my brother's friend, but I had known this girl for a long time and I actually had respect for her, yeah? So I'm just crashing out on Josh and just saying get the fuck out of the party, I don't want to speak to you again. And as I'm saying all of this, my girlfriend's like, Luke, calm down, it's okay. So after this, he apologizes and obviously he does leave the party. I get off the game and almost immediately tell my brother what he said. I tell him I'm not friends with him anymore. Obviously my brother's fuming about it as well, because that's just not what you say. Keeping in mind, we were actually super close for a year and a half by this point. We do everything together. Him and Crocker were literally my best mates at the time. The only difference was I'd been friends with Crocker for longer. But after I stopped being friends with him, he moves out of his mum's house and moves in with his dad, who lives around an hour away from me. So obviously he's not going to my school anymore. He'd already moved schools. And I remember around March of the same year, so it's 2022, the bell's just rung to go home from school and I'm walking down the street to get picked up by my brother. Now, where my school was is a fairly sketchy area, so as I'm walking down this street, I was always fairly precautious, looking out for the sorts that you'd typically see there. And as I'm walking, I see that these two Eshays are crossing the road to what looks to be come to speak to me, right? It looks like they're approaching me to speak with me, and automatically I felt tension in the air. I could tell that these guys weren't coming up to me to say something nice. Sure enough, they cross the road and they approach me. Now, as they're approaching, I am thinking I'm completely ready for a Royal Rumble. I don't want it to have to happen. but I'm completely ready for it just based off of how these guys are approaching me right now. They get a couple of meters away and they say to me, "Oi, brah." So I'll stop in my tracks and I say, "Yeah." And they start talking to me, "Are you friends with Josh, this and that?" And I say, "Oh, I was that." And they explain to me, you know, they got beef with him and they want to, you know, have a bit of a swack. And they asked me if I know where he is, and I said, I would not have a fucking clue, bro. So I end up walking off from these two boys, you know, I say see you to them, never heard from them again. But as I'm walking away, I think it's probably a good idea to call Josh's dad just so that they know the potential danger that may be lurking. Despite them living an hour away, I just wanted to let them know. So I call, and the reason I did this was because it seemed wherever Josh went, trouble followed. And I don't say this to disrespect him whatsoever, it's just the way it seemed. His house had unfortunately burned down. He always had people, you know, getting into beefs with him. He was always getting threatened and that sort of thing. And on top of all of it, he hadn't really had the easiest life, to be fair. You know, his mum was like really emotionally abusive, on drugs, on the piss all the time. She just wasn't ever there to support him. And I remember there was some days where he wouldn't even have food to eat. She just would not buy him food. So although I felt for him, I genuinely could not forgive him at the time for what he said. So, you know, I carry on the rest of the year just kicking it with Crocker and my girlfriend at the time. They were pretty much my only friends who I would actually hang out with in and out of school. But it gets to July and I've been invited to my mate Dallas's house for his birthday, which is in August. Dallas and I met in kindergarten. We'd been pretty close ever since. We just didn't really hang out at school. And by this point, he was a bit of a conehead. And out of everyone, I loved having an esh with him and Crocker. Me, him and Crocker were like that at the time in terms of like outside of school. We didn't really all hang out inside of school, but when it came to doing things on the weekend, we would always kick it together. And out of everyone, those were like my two best mates at the time. But then Dallas tells me that out of the other 5 people who were coming, one of the other people who was going to be there was Josh, right? So I think to myself, you know what? It's been a minute. I'm ready to be civil with him now. That doesn't mean I forgive him, but I'm ready to talk to him, put what he said in the past, pretty much. And on top of all of this, I was gonna be making some dollar bills, son, on the night of the party. So of course I had to go. Gets the day of the party, obviously I'm G'd the fuck up, you know, super excited to kick it with my boys. My girlfriend's gonna be there, good opportunity to get some photos with my boys, punch some cones, all that jazz. But around halfway through the day, I start feeling absolutely fucked. My whole body's aching, I've got a super sore throat, I feel super fatigued. I don't want to go to this party anymore, man. Not because it's not going to be fun, but because I feel like absolute death. But I say, you know what, fuck it. I'm gonna be stacking that bread and I'm gonna have a good time with my boys. So I get to the party, you know, I'm speaking to the boys, I dap them up. And at this point, everyone had already been there for like an hour or two. You know, I was the late one. They'd been hooking into the bevies, you know, they'd already been hooking into the cones. A few of the boys were even having gator tails that night. Now, I remember speaking to Josh a couple of times that night. Yeah, I ended up getting picked up by around 11 p.m. Nothing to complain about, it was a good time. But by this point, I was feeling tired as fuck and I was ready to go to bed. But from this point, I start talking to Josh again every single day. Pretty much just like nothing had happened. It gets to September and I've organised to stay at Josh's mum's house one night with Crocker. Most of you will know Josh's mum was super lenient. She just didn't really care about him whatsoever. So pretty much anything goes at Josh's house. That's the reason we chose to stay at his house. I remember we spent the whole night ripping cones, playing Fortnite and just talking shit to each other. And a memory which just constantly replays in my head when I think about this night is sitting on the couch at Josh's house playing Fortnite and listening to that song. I think it's called High School by Chillin' It and Shadow. Now I must mention by this point, Josh had made a very sincere apology about what he had said in the past, and I chose to forgive that, which I'm not saying there is anything wrong with. But to me, it also seemed like Josh had become a little bit more mature and thought about the things he said a lot more. He was off the ADHD medication by this point. You know, he just didn't feel like he needed it anymore. And for the rest of the year, Josh and I are tight knit. There was even one point there where Crocker cut both of us off and it was purely just us hanging out, you know, kicking it every single weekend. I remember because he lived in the town over, we would have like virtual Eshens every single day. You know, we'd call each other on FaceTime and pump cones. As shameful as it is to say, but it gets to January of 2023. And I've invited Crocker and Josh around to my house to stay for the night. Obviously, we're friends with Crocker again at this point. Now, our plans for this night were pretty similar to my previous video, only this time we had intended to eat 2 each, kick it, play video games in my room, talk shit, and we were gonna go for a walk at sunset. So it gets to around 8 p.m. that night. We both eat 2 and we go for a little walk. As we're walking, I'd say we get around 20 minutes in, and that's when, buzz, I decide it's time to go home. I'm sure you catch my drift. We walk home, you know, I'm sick on the way there. I'm just not feeling too good. And we get inside. Obviously, we are just fucking vibing with each other at this point. Josh is saying super out of pocket stuff. Me and Crocker are uncontrollably pissing our pants, talking about how funny tonight is. And I think around an hour into being back home, my eldest brother, who obviously knew, comes into my room and he goes, "How we feeling, boys?" And without a doubt at the time we said, "Oh yeah, feeling amazing," something along those lines, you know, we're having an amazing night, that sort of thing. So over the next couple of weeks, we just continued doing our usual degenerate behaviors. You know, Crocker and I had a crazy couple of nights, which I'm actually gonna do a whole video on, so I won't touch on it here. But we just kept testing our luck, you know, pushing and pushing. None of us had jobs. We just kept fucking around every single weekend, playing video games every day, all that sort of shit. Now, I remember just weeks before we had made the decision, which inevitably got us arrested. If you haven't seen the story, go watch it. We had been planning to do something much, much worse than what we ended up doing. We were going to go to Josh's town and do what we call an urch at the time. So I won't go into detail on what it was that we had planned out. But all I'm gonna say is that I truly believe us getting into the situation that we did that night, you know, we got arrested and all of that sort of thing, was a blessing in disguise, because the alternative, I believe, would have been much worse. This is a side of the story that I've never told. So obviously, in case you haven't heard by this point, I'll just touch on it briefly. Got into a dispute with this guy, ended up getting caught. It was all on CCTV. We got put into a cell for a day. We got our prints taken. We got let out on bail. And one of the conditions of our bail was that we weren't allowed to talk to each other. So once again, didn't really give a fuck at the time. Josh and I are still talking. Just over GTA, you know, we're playing GTA on our Xboxes. We're not over Snapchat or anything. But a few weeks into, you know, playing GTA every single day with him, I get the brief of evidence from the cops and I see, you know, he's done an interview, that sort of thing. Did not snitch us in, mind you, but I just decide, you know what, if they can get all of this and package it into like a Google Drive, there's no fucking way I'm taking my chances on what they could get by just me playing Xbox with him. So I'll stop talking to him, right? And I think we're all good. You know, I think, you know what? Once we're off bail, it'll be sweet. You will have that dap up moment in court. We sign the papers, we let free. Over the next couple of months, I'm talking to his mate who lived in the same town as him. And I remember one day I called this mate and he happened to be there. Josh was there. And one of the conditions of our bail was that we weren't allowed to touch or alcohol. But he was acting very strange on this call. So that's when I knew straight away, yep, he's punching cones again after he'd quit, you know, said he was never gonna go back to it. That's what he's just done, clearly. So I think, fuck man, he's just gonna get deeper and deeper into a hole. He's got no one to guide him. No one is in the same town as him. He doesn't actually have any real friends. He's just got friends that wanna kick it with him because they're, you know, getting f***ed up together. But I think, you know what? It'll be fine. In a year's time when we're all friends again, you know, we're able to talk to each other, I'll lead him down the right path. But it gets to November of the same year. I'm at work one day when all of a sudden I receive a notification on my new Instagram post. I was rapping at the time and I'd uploaded a new rap to Instagram. I see this comment from Josh that reads, "Pretty shit, bruh, should stick to selling clothes maybe," because I'd started a clothing brand at the time. And upon reading this, I didn't sense that it was a joke. You know, I genuinely did believe he was being serious, which he was. But I screenshot it, and as soon as I've done that, I refresh and it's gone. So what that told me was he posted it so he could take a screenshot, show his mates, and, you know, say, "Oh, look what I posted on Luke's video." But after this, I grow fairly resentful towards him. I think, you know what, fuck this guy. I've done so much for him. You know, I used to give him like my hand-me-down clothes that were like pretty much brand new, but just didn't fit me anymore. I used to help him make money all the time. I remember I was helping him and Crocker set up drop shipping stores. So I genuinely felt I'd done a lot for him and his life and improved him as a person. I could be wrong. This is just my perspective. And he had just said that. I felt betrayed. So after this, I remember getting super fucking one night and putting on like some emotional beats. I write a super aggressive, emotion-fueled rap called Fake, which was pretty much a diss track designed to get at him for what he had said to me. But the things that I said in it were very hard truths, very hurtful things that, looking back, I probably shouldn't have said and wouldn't have said if I had known better. But you know, obviously this whole channel is about me making mistakes and learning from them. That's why I'm telling you this story right now. But after I'd written this song, a couple of weeks later, he messages me and says, "Is this song about me, bruh? All good. I'm just spewing that your diss track on me is actually good." I don't reply. I just delete it. I delete the entire chat. I don't want anything to do with him, bro. But it finally gets to the 10th of April, 2024. Our court date. We were finally going to get a result after this 15-month-long court case. We get let out on probation under the conditions that we abstain from use and we maintain being functioning members of society. We go into the court office to sign our probation papers, and it's at this point that I'm finally allowed to speak to Crocker and Josh after 15 months of no communication. Now, I speak to Crocker, you know, we dap each other up, give each other a massive hug. We're genuinely excited to speak to each other because there was no bad blood between us. But that's when I turn to Josh, and straight away I feel there's tension in the air, you know. He knows what he said, I know what I said. So there's that looming tension between us. But I say, you know, fuck, how you been, bro? Like, I give him a dap. By this point, I'd done a lot more mental work, and I had decided I was gonna forgive everyone who had ever wronged me before. So, you know, I dap him up, like I said, ask him how he's been, all that sort of thing, but it was really awkward. We speak a little bit after court and we go on our separate ways. You know, he goes back to his town, I go back home, and it's at this point that Crocker and I, in a group chat, receive a message from him essentially apologizing for all of it. You know, he said sorry that he got us into this situation. You know, it was all his fault. We shouldn't have been there in the first place. And it was a genuine, heartfelt message. I actually want to read it out to you. Hey boys, just wanted to say I sincerely apologize for dragging you guys through this with me. Just happy it ended as well as it did. I completely respect your decision if you guys would like to part your own ways. Just glad we didn't end things on bad terms. All love, boys. I hope we can catch up sometime under better circumstances. All the best. Now, Crocker and I obviously reply saying that it wasn't his fault. We were all equally to blame. We all had a part in what had happened. And bro, I genuinely did forgive him for everything that happened. I do not blame him for what happened. It was equally to blame. But the mistake that I made the first time versus this time was that not only I forgave, but I forgot. The first time I forgave and forgot what he said. The second time I did forgive him for what he said, but I never forgot. It's like if you stay with someone who cheated on you, okay? If you stay with that person, they're gonna keep cheating again and again and again because they know no matter how many times they do it, you're gonna stick around. You're the chump that sticks around. So in his mind, I was the chump that was just gonna stay there no matter. He could say whatever he wants, you know, get on my nerves as much as he wants because he thinks I'm gonna take it as a joke or it's gonna be all good, you know, it's all a bit of banter. But like I mentioned, because I had been working on myself so much by this point, I decided that I was no longer going to hang around negative people. If you surround yourself with people who say negative things, even as a joke, bro, that's going to fill your subconscious mind with ideas and beliefs. Think about all the beliefs you currently have. They're not all conscious beliefs. I started to believe things that he was saying subconsciously because of how many times I had heard him say those things as a joke. And bro, the most common message that I get pretty much every single day from mostly young men is, how do I kick bad habits and how do I become disciplined? And the answer is one that most never want to accept. They don't want to hear it. It's not one, it's a painful truth, pretty much. Cut off every single one of your friends that does not help you in some way. And I don't mean physically, they don't actually have to help you work towards your goals, but just in the sense that they're speaking words that uplift you. They're not trying to tear you down. When you start making content, are they saying to you, oh, you're so cringe, like give it up? I know personally, Crocker, who's been there through it all, has supported me since day one. My eldest brother, Scott, when I was making the cringiest fucking content, cringiest fuck, like I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, you posted that? They were liking my shit. They were sharing my shit. They did not care that it was cringe. They just cared that I was happy. And that's what a true friend is, bro. Okay? Josh was not a true friend in the sense that he would not support me for the things that I wanted to achieve. He was just there for a good time. He wanted to drink and buddy. He wanted to go out and get f***ed up. He did not care who it was with. And that's the exact type of friends who he will have until he decides to make that change for himself. So if you want to make that change, then all I can suggest to you is that you change who you are hanging around. I had to sit alone every single day for the last 6 months of my schooling because I chose to cut off everyone. There were people I could hang around. I had mates at school. They were fake mates. I didn't want to hang around these people because I genuinely wanted to change, and I knew in order for that to happen, I had to cut off people who were talking shit about me and you know, just weren't benefiting me in any sort of way. I can now count my friends on one hand, bro. Show me your friends and I will show you your future. Simple as that. I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope you found immense value. If you did, smash the fuck out of that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next one. Stay grinding, my G. It's the January summer holidays of 2022. My mates and I are all 14 years old, and pretty much every single night throughout these holidays, we were staying at one of the boys' houses, okay? So the main lads that I would kick it with were named Crocker, who was my best mate, Josh, and Dallas. But we knew if we wanted to have a hectic night, like fully hectic, right? Crazy. Josh's house was the place to go. Reason being because his mum was super lenient. She didn't really care too much about him. As sad as that is to say, there was a lot of neglect going on there, as some of you will know from my past videos. Now, Josh's house had burned down the previous year, so as a result, he had to move in with his nan and pop. But this particular weekend, his nan and pop had gone on a holiday, so they were out of town. And his mum had decided to invite her friends around to the house, which really pissed Josh off. So Josh rings us up, tells us to come around, you know, invites me, my brother and Crocker around to stay for the night. And our plans were pretty simple, you know. We're gonna sesh up, play some video games, talk shit like we always do, stay up late, all that sort of thing. Your typical teenage things, right? Get to Josh's house, go into his room, you know, we're eshing up, we're playing GTA, playing Fortnite, spinning yarns. But I would say around an hour or two into being there, Josh goes out to his mum and his mum's mates, okay? He's talking to them. And around 15 minutes later, he comes inside. He's telling us how cool they are, you know, he was eshing up with them. They're mad c***s, he says. And so Crocker and I are debating whether or not we should go out there. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, we decide to go out. And it's pretty normal for the most part, aside from us being, you know, young kids hanging out with adults. We come back inside and, you know, we put in a good word for these lads. I say to my brother, you know, they're mad c***s, this and that. And once again, around 10 minutes later, he's debating whether or not he should go out there with us. And just as he's about to, one of the guys who was outside with us comes into Josh's room, uninvited, okay? The door's closed, he doesn't knock, he just walks in. And he starts talking to us, you know, he's spinning a yarn, he's a bit fried, but we don't think much of it. But around 30 seconds into him being in the room, the vibe shifts, okay? It feels a lot more tense. I'm not sure what it is. But he starts talking about whether or not we can fight, you know, if we've ever been in a street fight, this and that. And then he does something which gets all of us on guard, okay? He grabs me by the collar and he's like, can you fight, bruh? Can you fight? And he's like, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, maybe this bloke's like wigging out, like he's not in his right mind, you know, like he might have done something a little bit harder on this particular night. Yo, brother, if you're enjoying the story, please hit the subscribe button to hear stories like this every single week with amazing storylines and crazy life lessons. But with that said, I'll let you get back to the video. And so I'm like, what are you doing, bro? Like, get off me, get the fuck off me. He's got me by the collar, right? No more than 10 seconds later, my brother looks up from his phone, realizes what's happening, grabs his chingy, launches off the bed and says, "Get the fuck off him, get the fuck off my brother." And he's like waving it around like this. And bro, when I tell you, this bloke's face dropped like that. Like he went from like sort of a joking serious manner to like just completely like, what the fuck? Lets go of me, backs up really quick and scurries out of the room like a mouse. Okay, so we're all sort of a bit distraught after that. We're not sure what that was all about. The rest of the night goes pretty normal, aside from Josh's mum sort of going missing for a bit there. Did a whole video on that if you want to watch it, video's on the screen. But anyhow, about a week goes by, we get past this whole experience, as fucked up as it was, and we're staying at Josh's house again, okay? My brother's not there this time. It's me, Dallas, Crocker, Josh, and this other kid who we knew, Rufus. Now, once again, plans are pretty simple for this night. We're gonna ash up, play GTA, play Fortnite, eat shitty food, and just spin yarns, all right? So I'll get to Josh's house. We're in the granny flat at his nan and pop's house. That's where we'd always stay. And this time, we're sitting on the couch, you know, one of the boys is playing Fortnite, and somehow we get into the conversation of what drugs we've done before. Okay, so everyone's going over what they have done, what they haven't done. And it gets to me. All right, so I say everything, I'm not gonna say it on here. And it doesn't make me proud to say this, but I had done the most out of everyone, okay? And that really inflated my ego at the time because I saw that to be cool. Of course it's not. But I then asked the question, has anyone ever done cocaine? Of course, we're 14 years old. None of us had done it. Stupid thing to do. But now that the seed's planted, I say, do you boys want to get some? Of course, they say, yeah, let's do it. Like everyone's sort of keen to do it. Anyhow, long story short, we weren't able to get it on this particular night. The person who we were going to arrange ended up leaving town. You know, he was going to a party or something. So we don't get it this night, all right? But fast forward to a full month later, all right? I'm at the gym training one day by myself, and I messaged my mate Crocker, who you know, is feeling sick. That's why he wasn't there with me. And I say, bro, like, do you want to come train tonight? If you do, I'll stay at your house, yada, yada, yada. And we end up coming to an agreement that I'm going to stay at his house. We're going to play a bit of Minecraft. He'll come back for a night session. He'll be able to train because he'll be feeling better. And we'll just have a good night. Okay, so I finish up at the gym. I walk to his house and we get talking. He tells me he's feeling a lot better. And we jump on the game. We jump on Minecraft. Whilst we're playing, this idea pops into my head. The same idea that I had a month ago at Josh's house. I say to him, do you want to get a bag tonight? And he says to me, what, like cocaine? And I say, yeah. And he goes, yeah, let's do it. Now, first and foremost, before I dive deep into this story, I want to say I'm not promoting the use of this in any way. I'm not glorifying this. This is purely just a story to teach the lesson which I learned from it and show you how fucked up these situations can end, okay? So I say to Crocker, all right, I'll organize it. Let me just order a pizza for dinner and then I'll message this bloke. Right, so I order my pizza and then I message this guy that I know. We arrange a meetup time, get back to playing Minecraft like nothing happened. 30 minutes later, my pizza arrives, you know, chow it down, eat the whole thing. And we leave Crocker's house. We go get the stuff at our arranged time and we walk back to Crocker's house. And I remember as we're walking back, I had this feeling in my stomach. It wasn't just from the whole pizza that I'd just eaten. It was sort of this feeling of anxiety, not sure what to expect, not sure what was to come in the night ahead. And I would literally just say that's all it was. I was super anxious because, you know, 14-year-old kid, bro, never done this particular thing before, about to make a decision which ended up being very regrettable. Anyhow, we get back to Crocker's and he's wanting to do it this second, but I tell him like, nah, bro, I don't think I can do it just yet. You know, like wait half an hour to an hour, play a bit of Minecraft, wait for my food to digest and we'll do it, okay? So around 45 minutes later, I figure my food's digested enough. I say to Crocker, let's do this, bro. Right, so he goes first and he regrets it immediately. Tastes like shit, he says to me. Now shortly after, I have some, think the exact same. It's fucking disgusting. Now it's after this that we decide we should probably head off to the gym because we don't want to be around Crocker's mum whilst we're, I guess you'd say, impaired, all right? So I say to Crocker, let's go to the gym. And stupidly, we walk to the gym thinking it's a good idea to train on. Stupid as fuck, I know. As we're walking up to the gym, I get this feeling in my stomach. I'm feeling really sick. You know, I was feeling sick before, but I'm feeling even worse now. my body just starts rejecting it. I chunder like you have never seen, okay? My whole pizza comes up and I say, fuck bro, I feel so sick. Obviously Crocker's got a cast iron gut, he feels completely fine. We get up to the gym, tap in, go into the locker room and continue our antics there, all right? Now by this point, I'm not really feeling anything at all, but just looking at Crocker and the way he's acting, the way he's talking to me, my guess would be that he is, okay? So we walk out of the locker room and we start warming up, okay? Crocker's doing shoulder press. Now by this point, I'm definitely feeling it, okay? I'm recording myself and I'm bopping in the mirror and Crocker's just, you know, doing his set on shoulder press. But around 10 to 15 minutes into being there, I'll sort of say to Crocker like, bruh, it's really hard to train on this stuff, you know, like it's really hard to focus. We decide, all right, let's try it. We're gonna go for a walk and we leave. We walk for around 10 minutes and by this point, it's most definitely hit us. But around 15 minutes into us walking, we decide it's too cold. We're gonna go back to the gym and get into it again. All right, we're gonna try and hit some PRs. We get back to the gym and we literally stop this shit until there is nothing left. All right, we come out of the bathrooms and we load up the bar on bench press. You know, we're warming up, getting ready to hit some PRs. I load it up to my max, which is 80 kilos at the time, and I try and press it. It's fucking shaky. I don't get it. I fail miserably, all right? Now it's after this that we decide it's getting a little too cold, even in the gym. We should probably go home and I guess you'd say experience some of this at Crocker's house. All right, so we walk back to Crocker's, we get inside and we talk for a bit, right? We're sitting down talking, but around half an hour into being back at Crocker's house, I start to feel fucked. Like when I say fucked, I mean the worst I've ever felt. I get hit with this terrible like wave of, I guess, depression. I've never felt this low in my life. Okay, so what's happening is I'm coming down, all right? I've been in this super euphoric state for about the past hour and then I am coming down below baseline, right? So I feel like shit. I say to Crocker, oh bruz, I want to go to bed. Like we should probably just go to bed, hey. And I don't tell him how I'm feeling. Right, so Crocker takes the couch, lets me sleep in his bed, being the good that he is. And bro, I lay there for like 2 hours just thinking to myself with not a single positive thought on my mind. It's all negative. All I can think is, this is fucked. I start sort of thinking maybe I can get some more, maybe we can do more of this, I can come up with some money, Crocker can just pay me back. My brain starts rationalizing doing more of this drug, okay? And I can honestly see, bro, how people get addicted to this shit so easily. Not that I was or ever would be, but I can really see the psychology behind it and it's so sad, man. I was having these thoughts of my nan who had just recently passed away the month before. I was having thoughts about how my girlfriend, who was really nice to me at the time, was sitting at home completely clueless as to what I'd just done and I'd gone behind her back. You know, we were really honest with each other in the sense that, you know, we didn't want each other doing drugs. We really looked out for each other's well-beings and I had just gone behind her back and done that. And I mean, what the fuck could I expect? I'm a 14-year-old who's just ingested cocaine. I am lucky that I did not die this night, okay? The story doesn't end here. I'm gonna tell you what happened after. A few months later, so by 15 years old, I'm addicted to porn, addicted to punching cones every day and treating my girlfriend like absolute shit. And I had no idea at the time that this purely just came down to the fact that my life was full of these short-term pleasures. What you have to understand is that the easier the dopamine is to acquire, the harder your life's gonna be. You're just gonna keep digging yourself a hole, okay? The path to hell feels like heaven, but the path to heaven feels like hell. The harder the thing is to do, the more right it is to do. And the easier it is to do, the more negative of an impact it's gonna have on your life, the more negative it is to do. I just kept giving into these short-term pleasures and as a result, my relationships suffered. Not just my relationship with my girlfriend, my relationships with my friend. Stopped talking to Crocker, stopped talking to all of my other mates. They moved away, they distanced from me. They didn't want anything to do with me anymore. And by August of 2022, right, just 6 months later, I was a pepperoni-faced cone head with no friends, no relationship, and a porn addiction, okay? I can't stress this enough. In the span of 6 months, I went from a super healthy kid, pumping the gym every day, good relationship with my girlfriend, not really fighting much at all, good friendships, you know, good mates, to now being alone, single, broke, ugly, and an addict, okay? I went down this path which led me straight to hell. And I can't stress this enough, bro. To any youngin' out there who thinks this shit is a good idea, the place you think that path leads isn't where it fucking leads, okay? It's all glorified online. People think this stuff is so cool. It's normalized these days. You look up to the people who are going to parties. It's not worth it. It is for fucking losers. The people who are partying in school and the people who are doing this shit turn out the worst in real life, okay? High school is such a bullshit metric of how successful you will be in real life. The coolest, most popular kids in school turn out to be the biggest fucking losers who are doing nothing productive with their life these days. I know I would rather be considered a loser in high school for not doing the things that are considered normal than to be considered cool for doing the things that are considered normal, but turn out an absolute fucking loser in my life. It's decisions like the one mentioned in this story that fried my brain so much to the point where I thought it was actually a rational decision to some guy up with my 3 mates. And this is the decision which landed me in a lengthy court case where I was facing 3 different charges and up to 3 years in juvie, okay? It's not until now, when I'm 2.5 years clean, that I'm able to step back and look and see how fried I was at the time, the things that I thought were normal, the things that I glorified at the time, and the life that I was leading, how fried it was and how terrible of a position that I was in. So please, I can't stress it enough to any teenager watching this. That path that you are leading, that path you're thinking of going down, or perhaps you're even already on it, it is not fucking worth it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you did truly find some value in it and I'm able to impact your life. I'll see you in the next one. Hit the subscribe button. Stay grinding, my G. It's the January summer holidays of 2023. My mates and I are all 15 years old, and we could not be more excited to get out of school and start doing something with our lives. But I remember pretty much every single day throughout these holidays, I would just kick back with my mates Crocker and Josh. And one memory which sticks out from all of the rest was the night that Crocker and I got Josh so fried to the point where he passed out and we spent the entire night drawing on his face. But around 2 weeks before school was about to go back, I'm at the gym training one day when I receive a message from Josh telling me that this lad we knew named Rufus was trying to set him up. Now, to give you a bit of a backstory here, me and the boys all used to be friends with Rufus a couple years prior to this taking place, but we had stopped talking to him because he was a snitch, and on top of that, he had become a bit of a criminal in recent times, you know, cycling in and out of juvie, so we didn't really want to associate with someone like that. And pretty much what had happened was Rufus had messaged Josh asking him if he wanted to esh up together, and Josh found this super suspicious given that he no longer lived in the same town that Rufus and I did anymore. You know, he'd moved away. And sure enough, a couple hours after he received this message, a girl who was sort of a mutual friend of Rufus and Josh messages Josh and tells him that this Rufus kid is trying to set him up. Okay, so that pretty much brings you up to speed with everything you need to know moving forward in this story. All right, so after I read Josh's message, I decided I'm going to send Rufus a DM on Instagram. And to sum up what I said, it was pretty much something along the lines of, you better watch your next decision carefully or things could end very badly for you. Now, given that I was much bigger than the large majority of kids my age, and I was like 6'2", 80 kilograms at the time, I was not expecting the response that I got. A couple of days go by and I'm thinking that Rufus just isn't going to reply because he's so scared of what I said. But he decides to reply with, "Do you think I'm scared of you?" And this was the message that sparked the 5-day chain of insults back and forth to each other. Now, of course, at first I messaged Rufus because I was just trying to defend Josh, make sure nothing bad happened to him. But around 3 days into going back and forth over DMs with Rufus, he says something which crosses a fucking line and gets me so fired up. He says to me that my ex-missus was giving him the previous week, which wasn't the bad part. The bad part was, after she was done, she showed him the photos that I'd sent her when we had been dating together. And like I said, the reason this got me so fired up is because there's just some lines you cannot cross, all right? And one little detail I'd like to sprinkle in that I still find quite funny to this day is after he told me he was getting with my ex-missus, I said to him, "Good bro, she deserves someone like you." But anyhow, I ended up just telling him I'll see him when school goes back because I knew when we came face to face, he would not be talking so tough anymore. And let me just tell you, what ends up happening is far funnier than anything I could have ever dreamed of. but I'll get to that in a minute. So the first day of school rolls around and I'm trying to convince my mum to let me drop out because I'm just so fucking sick of school. I see it to be a waste of time. But of course, being the good mum that she is, she tells me that I have to go, that I'm not dropping out when I don't even have a job to go to. So she drives me to school that morning, and on the car ride there, I begin to talk about the things I'm gonna do to Rufus because what he's been saying to me over social media, right? I tell her, oh, if I see him, I'm gonna do this and that to him, you know, he's gonna get it. And she pretty much just tells me, you know, don't be stupid, try and ignore him, stay away from him, all the things that your mum would typically tell you. But of course, being the naive 15-year-old boy that I was, I don't take any of that on board, and I say to myself, when I see this cunt, he is gonna know it. So I arrive to school shortly after and I walk in the front gates. I go to roll call, you know, get my name marked off, this and that. And I head to first period, which conveniently enough was woodwork, all right? For my American viewers, I think that's called timber shop. And it just so happens that that was an elective that I'd chosen the year before with Rufus in that class. So I know that when I go to this period, all I've got to do is wait for Rufus to show up, and it is fucking on. I rock up to class and I sit at the same bench as a few of the lads that I knew. And I start telling them about all this shit Rufus has been saying. I'm telling them, oh lads, when this kid, you know, when Rufus arrives to school, it is fucking on, like get excited. And around 10 minutes into class, as the teacher is marking the roll off, the kid sitting across from me at the same table says to me that Rufus just walked in, looked at me, and then walked out. So I do one of these ones, like I fully fucking like snap my neck, you know what I mean? And I can't see him anywhere, right? So I say to him, are you sure it was him? Like it wasn't someone else? And he goes, no, it was him, it was Rufus. He just walked in, saw you, then walked out. So as soon as I hear this, I do not fucking hesitate, bro. I get up and I absolutely book it out of the classroom through the TAS quad, which is where like all the tech classes are. And I still can't see this anywhere. Like literally he's nowhere to be seen. So I get out of the TAS quad and I start running up towards the center of the school where the canteen is. And around 100 meters away from class, I come face to face with Rufus. He's just chilling at the canteen, you know, looking down at his phone. He's probably Snapchatting a few people, unaware of the danger that lies ahead. But sure enough, he must have seen me at the corner of his eye. He looks up and bro, I shit you not, to this day, this is one of the funniest stories that I'm gonna tell. His face goes from one of these ones to like this, like in a matter of seconds, like, oh! And as soon as he sees me, he goes, oh fuck, he knew he was in for it. I start running towards him. I would have been only like 5 meters away. And he absolutely fucking books it. He goes up the big set of stairs, goes onto the flat set of concrete, right in the dead center of the school. And as I'm chasing him, my heart is pounding faster and faster with every step I take, just with this fucking excitement, knowing that when I get him, I'm finally gonna get what I want. As he's running, he's screaming, help, sir, help, to the teacher nearby. I keep running after him, but he runs up the library stairs and into the library where 3 or 4 teachers block me off and stop me from getting to him. They ask me what I'm doing, you know, why am I chasing him? But my intent is still set on him, and I can just see him through the glass. He's throwing up gang signs, and he says to me, I shit you not, I cannot make this stuff up. He goes to me, you want to slide on me when I don't have my boys? And I say to him, what? It's a one-on-one. He was one of these little fucking wannabe gangsters, all right? But a few seconds after this had all unfolded, the male teacher who he was calling out to nearby comes up to me and he says like, hey mate, what's the matter? What was that all about? You know, come down to my office, we can have a chat. He's talking to me in a really friendly manner. It's not really disciplinary like most teachers would. So I walk down to his office, I start, you know, talking to him. My heart's fucking pounding. I've got all this adrenaline pumping through me. And he's asking me all these questions. So I explained to him what was said, you know, the things he'd been saying. And I mentioned the part which really tipped me over the edge, you know, the part where he said, my ex-missus was giving him and she had showed him the photos. Now it's at this point that this lad of a teacher asks me who exactly it was that I was chasing. So I tell him, you know, it was Rufus. And it turns out this dude didn't fucking like him either, because he had been in a little bit of a disagreement with one of his students the year before, and his student had obviously got him, you know what I mean? But around 10 minutes into being in this lad's office, he receives a call from the deputy asking him to bring me down to her office. Now, as soon as I heard that, I knew that I was going to be in for a wicked punishment. Reason being, in my 3 years of schooling at this high school, I wasn't exactly in her good books. I had been in her office more times than I care to admit. I'm talking if something bad happened that had literally nothing to do with me, I was always the first person to blame because, well, most of the time it was me. So this lad walks me down to her office, and just as we're about to enter like the main office area, I can see her standing out the front with her arms crossed, looking all fucking angry at me. And she appears to be fucking fuming. So we walk through the office doors, following behind her. And it's at this point that I see Rufus sitting in the principal's office with the door wide open. I think, holy fuck, this is my time. This is gonna be my redemption arc, son. And just as I'm about to run in there and get this little, the deputy says, "Don't you dare." And like blocks off the entrance so I can't get in there, right? We get into her office and she tells me to take a seat, so I do. And she starts going in, "What were you thinking, Luke? What, were you gonna bitch him or suck him and have the coppers down here arresting you, were you?" So I proceed to tell her exactly the things that he's been saying. You know, he's been making threats towards me. I tell him the things he said to me over Instagram. And she tells me, "Oh, well, do you really think it's a good idea to chase him on your first day back at school? You should come to me for things like this, Luke." All right, now, fair enough. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. So I tell her that I find it bullshit. If he's gonna make threats, then he should be willing to suffer the repercussions. And she didn't fucking like that. So we go back and forth for a couple of minutes as the story goes. But the conversation pretty much concludes with, "Look, Luke, I'm gonna call your mum, gonna get her to come and pick you up for the day. And if you choose to come back tomorrow, you'll be in my office first thing discussing the areas that you can and can't go for the rest of the year so that you're not near Rufus." Now, if you knew this lady like I knew her, you would know, you would understand that that was her way of saying, "Don't fucking come back to school, all right? I don't want to do all the paperwork." Fucking Siri just scared the fuck out of me. This was pretty much this lady's way of telling me, don't come back to school, but I don't want to do the paperwork, right? Because there's a lot of paperwork involved in expulsion. And I know that to be true because she had forced Josh out of school a couple years back in 2021. I'll talk about that in this video on the screen if you want to watch it. So she sends me out the very front of the office where students would typically get picked up from. She sends one of the office ladies back down to my classroom to collect my bag that was still there. And I spend the next 10 minutes sitting there with so much regret, not because I had chased Rufus, but because I didn't get him. And I'm just thinking, fuck, I've got to make things right. And making things right in my mind was going and getting this little cunt for the things he had said. All right, now I'm not saying any of these things are right, you know, morally. I'm not saying that this was a good decision. But what comes next is just absolutely fucking absurd. After sitting there for 10 minutes, I decide, you know what? I'm gonna go get this little and I'm gonna film the whole thing. So I put my phone in my front pocket and I start walking out of the office towards where Rufus is, right? The principal's office. But just as I'm about to exit out the door to go and do that, one of the office ladies says, "Hey Luke, where are you going?" I'll quickly make up an excuse. "Oh, I'm going down to my classroom to get my laptop. I think I left it there." And she says to me, "Oh, just wait, Dale, I'll come with you." So she follows behind and I proceed to make my way to the principal's office. Now, as soon as I get there, I'm thinking, fuck yes, I'm gonna get this little, this is my time, this is my redemption arc. But that's when I see the deputy guarding the office doors. And as soon as she sees me, she bellows out, "Luke, go now!" Now, it was a good thing that I had this laptop excuse. I say, "Oh, I was just coming to ask if I could get my laptop from class." By the way, the laptop didn't even fucking exist. You think I had a laptop? I barely had an attendance rate. So to sum it up, I don't end up getting this moment of satisfaction that I had hoped for. Mum comes and picks me up and I spend the rest of the day riding my BMX and chilling in the pool at home. But bro, all of this could have been avoided if both Josh and I had just chosen to take Rufus's words for exactly what they were, words. Because the thing is, when people say things, they only have meaning if you let them have meaning. Like, I could call you a cunt right now and you could choose to take the maximum amount of offense to that, or you could choose to say, okay, that's fair enough, you're entitled to your own opinion. Words don't have meaning other than what you place behind them. It's like if I yelled at you in a foreign language, right? You wouldn't understand it. I could yell all these insults, but no matter how hard I try, it's just not gonna clock to you. I know you've probably heard this before, but it's like, things only get to you if you let them get to you. And what I'm teaching here isn't cowardice, it's emotional maturity. It's being able to regulate your emotions in such a way that you don't act on every single one that you feel, because it becomes a real problem when every emotion you feel you think you need to act on. Like I said in the other day's video, I believe, this is how we end up with so many drug addicts, school people who are so confused and unsure of what to do in their life. They're trying to identify as something they're not, or be something they're not, I should say, because they choose to act on every emotion they feel. Emotional maturity is being able to stay calm during a disagreement, you know, through someone's anger and through them yelling at you, and being able to say, you know what, it's all good, I'm not gonna feed the fire, I'm not gonna let this person's words get to me, and I'm just gonna take them for exactly what they are. You know, it's all heat of the moment. We've all said something before that's in the heat of the moment. But the thing with these heat of the moment things, right, is you can't take back things you've said. You can't take back things you've done. If every decision you make in life is based off of the emotion that you're feeling, you are going to lead a very unhappy and very unfulfilling life. You know, taking drugs, sex, alcohol, porn, all of these things feel good in the moment, but actually take away from your future self and regress you down the line. They don't further progress your life in any way. And they are emotion-fueled decisions. Once I learned emotional maturity, I became more fearless, more jacked, more rich, more stoic, more courageous, all of these things. My life just got so much better in every single way because I chose to master my emotions instead of letting them master me. Because whatever you worship, whatever you choose to give into, is ultimately what has control over you. If you're scared of being broke, you worship money. If you're scared of being skinny, you worship someone with a perfect physique. And the only thing that I now choose to worship is the Almighty Lord Jesus Christ. Amen to that. But I hope this video helped. I hope you found the story somewhat entertaining. With all that said, I will see you in the next one. Hit the sub button, smash like, stay grinding, my G. It's a Friday afternoon in the summer holidays, and I'm laying on my bed reading a message from a girl that just 5 minutes before I believed to be the same age as me, threatening to send certain pictures of myself to all of my Instagram followers, including family members, if I didn't send her $500 right away. But to understand how I got myself in this situation, let me take you back to where it all began. It's 2020, I've just started high school, and I've been getting a lot more attention from girls than I ever had before. And because of this increased amount of attention, my mindset began to become a lot more geared towards, you know, dating girls, losing my V card, all of that sort of thing. So fast forward to one Wednesday afternoon in early March, I've organised to go to the park and link up with this girl named Clara with my best mate Crocker. Now, just to give you a brief little backstory on Clara, I'd had a little talking stage, I guess you'd call it, at the beginning of the year, but typically as these things go, you know, 12, 13 years old, it just didn't work out. But nonetheless, we were still friends. So Crocker and I walked to the park, and upon arriving, we see that Clara is actually with one of her best friends named Alice. Now, I had Alice on Snapchat, but I'd never actually seen her in real life. So I didn't know what she looked like up until that point. But upon seeing her, she's hands down like 100 times more attractive than what I pictured her to be. You know, I was expecting her to be some absolute ogre. The best way I can put it is she looked a lot older in all the ways that matter to a young man's mind, you know what I mean? So instantly I become locked onto the idea that I'm gonna date this girl, right? I literally said in my head at the time, I'm gonna date Alice. So hang out with Clara and Alice for the afternoon. And after talking to Alice for a bit, the vibe I'm sort of getting off of her is like super cute, sweet, innocent. But just a couple months later, I would find out how deceiving that appearance truly was. Gets to around 5:30 p.m. and Crocker and I decide it's probably a good time to go back to his. And as we're walking back to Crocker's house, I'm just yapping his ear off about how I'm gonna date Alice, how hot she is, this and that. And I'm just G'ing myself up. And he's like, yeah, he's heard it all before. We get back to Crocker's house and I decide that I'm gonna put my money where my mouth is, right? So I ring up Clara on FaceTime, obviously don't have Alice's number, and I say to her that I'm gonna date Alice. Alice is gonna be my girlfriend. I'm just saying it with such fucking certainty and confidence, right? And obviously Alice hears this in the background, you know, being nearby, and she says that she has a boyfriend. And that's when I proceed to say with once again 100% confidence, oh, that doesn't matter, he doesn't have to know, which of course isn't right. But upon saying this, like I was sort of saying it in a joking way, but she says, all right. Like she actually agrees with me. He doesn't have to know. And so Alice and I start talking pretty much every single day from this point onwards, which of course I should have seen as a red flag from the jump. Now, before we move forward in the story, I must say that at this point in time, I was only watching like 3 or 4 times a week. At the absolute worst, it was probably like once a day. But something would very soon happen that would lead me down a path of complete addiction to it. Of course, I'm getting to that. What's cracking, brother? I'll let you get back to the video in just a second, but really quickly, hit the sub button, son, because every single one of you who are subscribed are literally the ones who make these videos possible every single day. We're currently approaching 100,000 subs, so do me a fucking favor, hit it right now. I'll let you get back to the story. It gets to one night in early June, and I've organised for my close mate Rufus to come around my house. Obviously, if you're a regular viewer, this is before all the shit happened with him. And given that we were still fairly innocent at this point in time, you know, neither of us were 13 years old yet, our plans for this night were to essentially just camp out the side of my house in the tent, eat lollies and drink fizzy drinks, right? So we're sitting in my room just kicking back before we actually decide to go out to the tent. And it's around 8:45 we decide that we're going to give Alice a ring because she's with her friend Clara, who Rufus happened to fancy, right? So we ring them up, they answer straight away. And we're sort of just talking to them about what they're up to for the night. I'm not exactly sure how we pivoted into this conversation, but somehow it comes up that Alice's dad is out of town, which meant it was just her mum home, she wasn't strict at all, and that we could come over later that night. Now, as soon as we hear this, obviously being young lads, we get G'd the fuck up for a multitude of reasons. There was such a sense of novelty about sneaking out and going to places when your parents didn't know. It was like you had complete freedom. So Rufus and I agree that we're gonna link up with Alice and Clara later that night after my parents go to bed. Around 20 minutes past 9, we head out to the tent. You know, we're just sitting there playing the waiting game. We knew that we'd be able to leave the house once all of the lights were off and we'd said goodnight to my parents, right? So we just kick back in the tent for a little bit, but it gets to around 12:30 a.m. By this point, we've well and truly said goodnight to mum and dad. They're in bed. And Rufus and I both decide it's a good time to head off on our scooters to Alice's suburb. Now, just bearing in mind, June in Australia is the very start of winter. So around this time, it was like -1 degree Celsius, which is cold as fuck. But nonetheless, you know, nothing was gonna stop your boy in the relentless pursuit of the shorties. So Rufus and I slowly creep down my driveway with our scooters in our hand. And as soon as we get to the road, we put them on the tar, we start riding up. But around 1:20, Rufus and I pull up to Alice's street. I'll get out my phone, I message her, so like, are we all good to come inside? I'm out the front. But she says, you know, her mum's just been up, we can't come in just yet because she might hear us and kick us out straight away. So Rufus and I walk across the road to the park, which is right across from Alice's house, and just chill on the bench waiting. But around 10 minutes after this, Alice gives me a call and says, you guys can come in, but you gotta be super quiet. We get into Alice's room and, you know, tuck ourselves under the covers, get all warm. Rufus is laying there with Clara, having a chat to her. Meanwhile, I'm having a chat with Alice. And I would say around an hour and a half into being at Alice's house, I'm having a bit of a talk off to the side with her. And she says that she loves me. Now, we'd said this to one another before, but it was only really over text and it felt very immature. The fuck was that? That cow just sneezed. But this was the first time I'd ever heard it in person, which felt significant to me at the time. So of course, you know, say it back. But I remember thinking in this very moment that this would be the girl that I'd go on to date and then, you know, lose my V card to, potentially even marry one day. And I just can't believe how fucking delusional I was, bro, because that thought could not have been further from the truth, which of course I'm getting to. Fast forward to one Friday night in late June. By this point, I've asked Alice to be my girlfriend probably 3 or 4 times. And every single time she turned me down, she says she's just not ready yet. She's not sure, she loves me, but she doesn't want things to end badly. I never knew what the fuck she was talking about. But in just a couple of hours' time, I would soon find out why she'd been so hesitant to get into a relationship with me. On this particular night, I'd organised to go up to my mate Donnie's house, which his yard is just in the background there, and, you know, just spend a bit of time with him, his mate Clive, and my best mate Crocker. So Crocker and I walk up the road to Donnie's house, and, you know, it's really good at first. We're just vibing, having a few bevies, listening to some music. But I would say like 2 hours into being there, you know, feeling a bit of a buzz by this point. I'm standing there having a yarn with Donnie's mate Clive, and Clive asks me, if I've been talking to anyone. Now, given how attractive I found Alice at the time, I was super fucking proud to, you know, show off that she was, I guess, like my girlfriend, or I was talking to her at least. And so I say, yeah, I've been talking to Alice for like 3 months now. She's a really good chick, this and that. Like, I'm speaking very highly of her. And that's when Clive says to me, like, are you serious? I say, yeah, why is that? Like, he thinks I'm joking. And he goes, bruh, she's the biggest. I'm sort of like, what? Like, is this guy being serious? Like, is he trying to start beef with me or something? I say, why? Why is that? Like, why would you say that? Clive proceeds to get out his phone and show me some photos and videos of Alice, a lot of which I won't go into detail on here for obvious reasons. But as I'm watching these videos that Clive's showing me, you know, just one after another, it seemed like they were never ending. I am feeling absolutely fucked, you know, completely betrayed. This chick that I thought was super, you know, innocent, sweet, she was a super attractive girl in my eyes just 5 minutes ago, has done something as fucked up as what was pictured in these videos. Now, this could not have been a worse time for me to see these, because on this very day, it was Alice's birthday, but I did not give a fuck after I'd saw what Clive had to show me. I messaged Alice telling her, you're a fucking slut, you're a whore, I can't believe you've done this to me, you know, you've betrayed me, how the fuck could you do this to me? Like, I am going off, and like, obviously not condoning saying any of this stuff to anyone, especially women, but I am fucking losing my shit. I cannot believe what she has done, because it hurt, obviously it hurt. And she replies with like, Luke, I'm sorry, you know, this and that. But I end up blocking her on Snapchat. You know, I literally want nothing to do with her anymore. This was my first real taste of, I guess, heartbreak. After I block her on Snap, she sends a message to my number saying something along the lines of, Luke, I'm super sorry. You can understand why I didn't want to date you. I never meant to hurt you, and I did truly love you. I hope you can find someone to make you happy. It was something like that, right? But after this, given how much the situation actually hurt me, you know, how much I was affected by it, I'm just like, I'm not gonna date anyone, you know, for the time being. I don't really wanna, because it seems like they all just end up being. This is my mindset at the time. And so now, having a huge void in my life, I start to fill that void with, you know, usage, which I didn't actually realize was a bad thing at the time. I didn't know that it fucked up your neurochemistry, your brain function, that it actually kills off parts of your brain. Had no idea about any of this stuff. I'll leave some studies if anyone's interested in that down below. Because I wasn't aware of any of that, I really ramped up on my usage, you know, just trying to fill that void of, you know, the lack of intimacy in my life. And I carry out the rest of the year, watching 3 or 4 times every single day, binging on the weekend, you know, getting up with my boys, playing video games. But it gets into 2021, and as many of you will know, I get my first girlfriend named Sarah. Won't go into detail here because I've spoken about it like a million times. But at this point, the news sort of strips back. I'm not watching it as much. Until we get to the back end of 2022, I break up with her and everything pretty much just completely turns to shit. The addiction becomes 10 times worse than it had ever been before. You know, it's like they say, porn addiction usually starts with 2 emotions, boredom and stress. And in this particular instance, I was bored as fuck. I couldn't just go back after having that true human connection for 1.5 years and now having it completely stripped away, none at all. I start watching 3 or 4 times every single day. Obviously punching cones on the side, doing a bunch of other dumb shit that wasn't good for my mental health. And I start coming to school for only half days, you know, going home at 12 o'clock every single day, wagging a lot of classes. But I remember it was around this same time that this conehead chick in my science class named Ariana had started flirting with me heavy, which I believe is just because she knew I had just broken up with Sarah, so I was obviously single. Now, I was not attracted to Ariana whatsoever. Like I said, she was a conehead. She didn't have any features that particularly attracted to me. Around 3 weeks after the breakup, I remember one night Ariana starts snapping me on Snapchat, you know, just spinning a bit of a yarn. But she was clearly very, very. And she starts sending me some photos that are a little bit out of the ordinary, you know, being abundantly clear with what her intentions were, being very provocative with the things she's saying and sending to me. And as she's sending me this stuff, despite not being attracted to her before, I seriously start to consider not dating her, but, you know, getting with her. if you know what I mean. And I mean, looking back, this just goes to show how fucking down bad I was at this point in time to even consider that. Because not only was she a conehead, but she was clapped. And I say that with the utmost respect, you know, for storytelling purposes. She was not attractive by any means, bro. But despite this, I'm seriously considering something with Ariana. So a few weeks go by, and by this point, somehow her fucked up brain believes that we're somehow talking with each other just because I have her on Snapchat. And so every now and then when I'm sitting by myself, because I was just a fucking loner towards the end of high school, she would come up to me at the spot I'd usually sit, you know, I'd be eating my beef mince and rice, and she would act very sad or like in a way that sort of demanded attention. The best way I can put it is she was very emotionally manipulative. You know, she knew how to try and make you feel bad in order to get what she wanted. But I would never bite. I'd sort of just tell her like, oh, I sort of just want to be left alone, this and that. But I remember one day in mid-September, she came up to me, and on this particular day, I was feeling just extremely down bad. You know, this is around the time I'd been watching like 4 or 5 times a day. I'd been watching it in the morning as soon as I wake up. I was not in a good headspace. So as she starts talking to me, I actually don't want her to go away. Like, I'm happy with her being here talking to her because I don't really have many people to talk to at this point in time. But as I'm talking to her, somehow the fucked up thought pops into my mind of go. Now, I don't exactly remember what persuaded me against that decision because she would have straight away been down if I said about it. But I make the decision not to do that, you know. But fast forward to early 2023. I'm sitting in the car on the way downtown to do a photo shoot for my clothing brand that I'd started at the time, when I receive an Instagram follow and a Snapchat ad from this girl who looks, you know, reasonably similar age to me. And so I add her back. And immediately she's asking me questions about myself. She's trying to get to know me, but she starts making her intentions very well known. You know, she's being very provocative with the things she's saying and sending. And it's clear to me that she wants some sort of relationship with me, or she wants me to send certain things to her. And so I get downtown, you know, I do the photo shoot, all that sort of thing. But when I come home, I sort of just lay on my bed, you know, I'm editing up a couple of photos to post on Instagram from the shoot. When she starts sending me just straight out, you know, like basically, and as I'm looking at it, you know, I'm just getting G'd the fuck up. I'm saying to her, like, send more, this and that. But after she sent probably 2 or 3, she tells me that I have to send something back in order for her to keep sending them. Now, obviously, I'm not a fuckwit, so I'm not gonna send some random stranger photographs that are gonna exist out there forever, right? Not a dumb despite what you may think. And so I go onto Google, cut out some stickers on Snapchat, and I start sending them to this girl, right? So we're going back and forth with one another. Now that I'm sending her some, she's sending me some. But I would say around 2 hours into being back at home, you know, snapping this girl, she sends me a photo that had been taken from another phone of the Snapchats that I'd sent her. Now, as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, what sort of fucking elaborate scam is this? And the message that follows all of these photos is a screenshot of every single one of my Instagram followers, coupled with a text demanding I send her $500 or else she's gonna send it to all of my followers. Now, thankfully I wasn't a fuckwit and I didn't send her anything that would actually expose me to any level of danger. And so after this, I sort of feel like I've got the upper hand. You know, I send her a message saying, how fucking stupid are you to believe that this is real? And I block her. And it's sad to think that these scams actually work on a lot of young men. Like, I know my bro Manish Rao, he had something similar happen to him, but he unfortunately did make the mistake of sending her things that he didn't want exposed to the public, and ended up in a super fucked up situation because obviously didn't send the chick any money. Well, fast forward to February of 2022. By this point, I've actually gotten out of a second relationship. I'm not watching porn anymore. I don't really have any of the bad habits that I used to have in my life. I'm at the gym training one Friday afternoon with my older brother when I see a girl a couple of meters away that I've actually seen in the gym before. And I found her super attractive at this point in time. And so I say to my brother, like, that's the girl I was telling you about, you know, seen her here a couple of times. I'm gonna go up and talk to her. And he's jamming me up. He says, you should, you know, just fuck, like, the worst she can say is no, you should just go up and talk to her, get her Snapchat. And as soon as he says that, I start cycling through all these potential scenarios in my mind where she might reject me. But nonetheless, I say, fuck it, you're not a bitch anymore. You're a grown man. Walk up to her and talk to her. So I start walking up to her, and when I get a little bit closer, I can see that she's got her head down in her phone, right? She's just sitting on the machine on her phone. But when I get up close, I sort of tap her on the shoulder and I say, "Excuse me." She looks up at me, and I, in a somewhat confident way, say, "Hey, I saw you from over there. I just wanted to come up and say you're really beautiful." Crickets. She is just staring at me for like a solid 5 seconds before she says anything. And that's when she comes out with, "Thank you." So fucking awkward. I could just sense how uncomfortable this girl was. And you know, there could be fucking a million reasons as to why she was uncomfortable. But in my mind, the one reason was because I was covered in acne and I lacked confidence. I wasn't exuding confidence to this girl, and she wasn't attracted to me for those two reasons. And so what I thought was going to be a super good interaction, you know, she was going to say, "Yes, give me your Instagram, maybe we start talking," had just turned into one of the most uncomfortable and awkward experiences of my life. And my sole reason for being so fucking awkward at the time was years and years of just digital interaction, you know, watching porn, becoming so used to everything being digital and so fake, because porn is a form of fake intimacy. Like, this is no over exaggeration. Up until mid 2023, my screen time was 12 plus hours every single day. Like, I was fucking watching porn on the big screen, watching it on the TV, bro. That's how bad it had gotten. And porn is hands down the number one thing that is going to lead to a low self-esteem and a low confidence, because when you think about it logically, you are training your brain to become aroused watching other people have sex rather than you doing that act yourself. And that's why so many men, you know, they get dysfunction, they can't get hard unless they watch porn, because they've trained their brain for that to be the thing that gets them aroused rather than actual intimacy. Now, since this experience, obviously I've approached a fair few more girls. I've become a lot more confident in my outward appearance and in the way that I'm able to speak to people and articulate myself. But I've made myself a promise that I'm never going to ever get into a relationship again that is driven purely by the desire for sex and lust, because I know every single time without fail that I've done that in the past, it's led to me knowing them only physically, never emotionally, spiritually. I know nothing about them, but I know them in the biblical sense. That is one of the most spiritually binding things you can do with a person. And to do it with just anyone because you are a horny just seems so pointless to me, and it seems just so disrespectful to the person that you will one day marry. This is like genuinely my opinion. And so I guess my honest advice, if you want to call it that, although, you know, I am 18, I'm still learning myself, is to stay away from porn indefinitely and stay away from the puntus at least until you know you're going into a relationship with pure intentions and it's not just for the desire of sex. But with that said, I really appreciate you for watching this video. Hit the sub button, smash the fucking like, and as always, stay grinding, my G. It's December of 2020, I'm 13 years old, and I've organised for my close mate Stephen to come around to my house to stay for the night. Now, our plans on this particular occasion weren't anything too special. We're going to set up the tent around the side of my house, ash up and listen to some music for the night as we always would. But as these stories typically go, that's not what ended up happening. So Stephen arrives to my house at around 4 p.m. We head up to my room straight away, and at first we're sort of just laying on my bed, scrolling on TikTok, you know, on Snapchat, that sort of thing. But I would say around half an hour into Stephen being at my house, I go onto Snapchat and start tapping through Snapchat stories, when all of a sudden, I come across a story from a guy who, for the sake of this story, we will call Will, selling loads of different stuff, half of which I had never heard of before. But there was one particular thing that he had for sale that caught my interest in particular. Now, just a quick disclaimer before I move forward with this story, I want to say I'm not glorifying or condoning any of the behaviors or activities mentioned in this video. I'm simply recounting a stupid thing that I did when I was younger in hopes that you can use my story to make better decisions for yourself. So as soon as I see this on Will's story, you know, I'm getting G'd the fuck up. And I say to Stephen, like, bro, do you want to get some of this tonight? And of course, being equally as curious, young and dumb, he says, yes. But that's when we're faced with our very first issue. We're 13 years old, so we can't exactly get jobs, which meant we didn't have any money because the only money I would ever make was from selling like a tiny bit of Udbays at school. So we think, all right, fuck, we just can't get it. But that's when I come up with a genius idea, or at least I thought it was a genius idea at the time. Looking back, it was dumb as dog shit. I remember that a couple weeks before, I had sold some Udbays to this Koori lad that I went to school with, and he had fully stitched me up, right? He gave me like this Chinese play money, but rolled up, it looked fully legit. It was like these $20 notes, had this like lettering on it. And so I proposed to Stephen that what we can do is we can organise to meet up with Will, get someone to drive us there, hand it out the window just like this Koori lad had done to me, and then speed off as soon as we've, you know, made the exchange. Foolproof, we thought. Of course, like I said, looking back, dumb as dog shit. And so I organised for one of my older mates to come and pick us up at around 6:30, 7-ish, and take us to the spot that we'd organised to meet Will. All right, so we get picked up, we drive just up the road. It was like 5 minutes away from my house. Of course, on the way there, I sort of run our older mate through what the plan is so that he knows, you know, make the exchange, speed off, everything's gonna be sweet. But upon arriving to the meetup spot, we see that it's not an actual address, right? He's just told us to meet him at this street. We assumed it was out the front of his house, but he wasn't on foot. A couple minutes after arriving, he pulls up in a car. So obviously it goes without saying our plan here was not gonna work, because as soon as he realizes the notes aren't legit, he's just gonna speed and, you know, chase after us, I would imagine. And so our older mate says to me, like, bro, you gotta come up with a plan quick. How about you just tell him you left the money at home? You know, you can't get it. What's cracking, my boy? I'll let you get back to the story in just a second, but first hit the fucking sub button, because every single one of you who are subscribed are literally the ones who make these videos possible every single day. Thank you so much. I'll let you get back to the story. So I get out the front passenger door. I walk around to Will's car and I say to him, hey, bro, like I've left the money at home. But that's when Will says to me, oh no, it's all good. You know, like I'll swing by and grab the money tomorrow. Here you go. And he passes them out the window. Now in my mind, I'm just celebrating, thinking, you dumb fuck, yes, you just got played. But I'm sort of like, I play it off, you know, say thank you, walk back around, jump in the car, and I say, he fucking gave it. Like he just ticked it to me, boys. Like, let's fucking go. So we pull away, older mate drives us back home, get inside, have a bit of dinner. And that's when Stephen and I sort of just play the waiting game. You know, we don't want to do this stuff too early because obviously mum and dad are still awake. Don't want to get caught doing something as stupid as this. But I would say at around 8 o'clock, I'll say to Stephen, let's do them now. And then once it's, you know, taken its effect, we'll head out to the tent and we'll listen to some music. Everything will be all good. You know, mum and dad aren't going to come out, or so we thought. And we do them. After we've done them, we sort of just sit there anticipating, you know, maybe like an hour and a half, we'll be starting to elevate, but that thought could not have been more wrong. Around 20 minutes goes by and I'm sitting there, you know, scrolling on TikTok, just fucking around, when I hear Stephen say, bruh, holy fuck. And I say, what? Like I thought he must have been reacting to a video. And he goes, this is fucking crazy. And he's sitting there like this. And I'm like, what? Bro, it's been like 20 minutes. What are you on about? It's like, it takes like an hour, hour and a half. What are you talking about? I get my phone out and I sort of take a photo with like the flash on like this, because when you do that, if they have, you know, taken effect, you're gonna have a set of dinner plates, you know, a set of high beams glaring into the camera. So he looks this way, I'm taking a photo with the flash, and sure enough, they've hit him. And I say, all right, let's go get some blankets and we'll go outside. Like we'll go out to the tent, because if yours have hit, it's not long until I follow suit. So we turn the light on, walk down the hallway, open up the cupboard and start getting the blankets out. And it's in this moment that I sort of start to have this rising anxiety about my parents, you know, catching us, because they were in the lounge room, right? They turn their head 90 degrees, they're gonna see us in the cupboard getting blankets out, which obviously wouldn't have mattered. They wouldn't have known anything sus was up, but in my mind it did. So as we're getting the blankets out, I'm just trying to rush, get them as quickly as possible. But literally like 20 seconds into doing so, Stephen comes out with, bruh, it feels like I'm flying. And I say to him, shut up, my parents are right there. Like I'm actually getting frustrated with him, because if we got caught, I don't even want to know what would have happened, all right? So Stephen shuts his mouth, we get the blankets and we quickly exit out the laundry door of my house. We walk out to the tent. As soon as we get into the tent, I would say like 10 minutes after, obviously everything starts taking effect for me as well. We put some music on, I'm really feeling the music. I say to Stephen, like, holy fuck, this is insane. This is not what I was expecting at all. Like, we're sitting there off in our own worlds, right? Of course, by this point, the high beams are very much in full effect, but it gets to around 10 to 9, so like 8:50 p.m. And my eldest brother, who I had told what we were getting up to on this particular night, comes out, you know, asking, you know, how you feeling, boys? And that's when Stephen, you know, pops his head out the tent. He jumps out the tent and he's like, bro, I fucking love you. You're the sickest ever. Like, bro, I fucking love you. You're a mad. Keeping in mind, he didn't even know my brother, right? They'd met like once or twice before. And of course, my eldest brother just starts cracking up. What else do you do in that situation? That's funny as fuck, right? So he's just standing there laughing at Stephen, you know, he's telling him he loves him. And he goes back inside. We get back in the tent and we're just sitting there, you know, taking stupid videos of ourselves, singing along to the, you know, hard style or like the party music that we were listening to. But as we're sitting there off in our own world, you know, music blaring, I hear a voice. So I say to Stephen, wait, turn the music down. I think I'm hearing things, but then I hear it again. Luke, mate, you forgot to squeegee the screen. It's my fucking dad. Right? And the second that he came out, I was literally talking to Stephen about how insane this experience is. But thankfully, to my knowledge, he didn't hear me over the music. But that was the least of my issues at the time. This meant that I had to go inside, into the light, with the high beams on, and squeegee the screen without anyone seeing me, because if they did, and they looked me in the eye, they would know something was up straight away, obviously. So Dad goes back inside, I get out of the tent, and I'm just trying to get inside as quickly as possible without anyone seeing me. You know, dry off the shower, get straight back out, because as soon as I was back outside, everything would be all sweet. I walk in the laundry door, the light's on, I'll go into the shower, dry off the screen literally as fast as I possibly could. For anyone wondering what squeegeeing is, it's literally just so that the glass doesn't get stained, you know, like wiping the water off. And as I'm doing it, my heart is just beating faster and faster. I'm like, holy fuck, bro, if mum or dad comes and says good night and, you know, is looking at me in the eye, they're gonna know something is up straight away. And I'm just stressing the fuck out. But by the grace of God, I managed to squeegee the screen, turn all the lights off, lock the laundry door behind me, and head back out to the tent. So I get back out to the tent and we decide to put on a very different style of music, you know, instead of just this doof hard style party shit. I think we put on like a bit of Pink Floyd, maybe some Australian rap. And as the night goes on, Stephen starts opening up to me about a few of the mental struggles that he's been facing over this past year, which I won't go too into detail here because it's not my place to do so, but that is relevant to later on in the story. Gets to around 10:30 p.m. and I have the idea to call my best mate Crocker and explain to him, you know, what we've been up to, because this was never planned. He didn't know we were doing it and he had no idea we had done it. So Stephen and I give him a ring, you know, we FaceTime him and we're like, bro, we just did like, this is fucking crazy. And immediately I can see that he's really sort of cut that he wasn't invited. He says, oh, how come you didn't invite me? And I say, oh, it was sort of like a last minute thing. Like we were just gonna ash up in the tent like we always do. But then, you know, I come across this guy named Will Story and I saw that he had this and one thing led to another. He goes, oh, what's it like? And, you know, we start describing it to him. But as we're talking to him, I feel so fucking bad for not inviting him or for him not being there for this experience that I decide we should meet up with him later on in the night, so that, you know, I guess he can sort of be a part of it with us, if that makes sense. Right, so we come to the conclusion that we're gonna link up with Crocker in the suburb over where he lives and just walk around with him all night. So fast forward to around 12 a.m. Stephen and I decide it's a good time to leave my house, you know, sneak out and start walking to Crocker's suburb. So we slowly creep down my driveway, out the front gate, and down the road. Right, so nothing really worth mentioning happens on the trip over to Crocker's suburb. I would say it took us like 20 minutes to travel the full 5 kilometers to him, given our state. But as soon as we arrive, Crocker starts ripping up, you know, he's punching a few cones, and we just start walking around the suburb, all of us being complete polar opposites. You know, Stephen and I, eyes glaring, and Crocker's eyes are basically shut at this point. But to give a conclusion as to how this night ended, Stephen and I decide to head home at around 3:30. Crocker does the same. Stephen and I get back to mine at around 4 a.m, go to sleep somehow, but I wake up at like 7 a.m. the next day, And to say I felt fucked would be an understatement. You know, I've got a throbbing headache, my jaw, my body is super sore. And I got the good end of the stick because Stephen felt so bad that after this, he made the decision to never do it again, which I'm gonna get to in a second. That's the whole purpose of this video. But over the course of the next year, I would say Crocker and I both did this probably 30 times, being conservative. And Stephen's reasoning for never wanting to do it again was the fact that the night after he had done it, he noticed his mental health getting worse and worse. Like I said, he already had pre-existing mental issues before going into this experience. But I remember one night in early January 2021, I'm staying at Stephen's house for the night, which is actually going to be what I talk about in my next video. And we're walking to this park to go and sort of esh up, right? And as we're walking there, he starts opening up about how fucked up his mental health's getting, you know, all the things he's been experiencing over this past year. And he's talking about how it's been amplified after what we had done in December, right? What this whole story's been about. And I'm sort of like comforting him, like I'm being a good friend. But I remember from this point, it seemed that Stephen's mental health was just on a complete decline, right? I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to out his business on here. But the common denominator here seems to be the experience he had on this particular night with me, which of course it makes sense, you know, it's an extreme psychiatric, but I sort of couldn't link two and two together at the time. You know, I just thought he was sort of having general struggles that most young men do. So I sort of just want this video to serve as, I guess, like a cautionary story to any young man or woman who's been considering doing this stuff, or maybe you see your peers doing this stuff and you know it's wrong, but perhaps the temptation is very strong like it was for me. I personally didn't see any issues with a lot of these things at the time. You know, I thought it was very normal because it is very normalized in today's society, you know, doing drugs, drinking alcohol, doing all the typical shit that somehow makes you look cool. And it's very easy to fall into that trap of, you know, doing those things, engaging in those things. And I feel like it's so obvious to say that drugs fuck you up and they're not good for you. But to many young people it isn't. And I get a lot of people in my comments even saying like, oh, you're a soft cock because you don't do this stuff anymore, or you were just a bitch, you couldn't handle it. But it's not that at all. For some people, you know, drugs have a very different effect on different people's brains. Some people can do it and not have any effects whatsoever. Others get super psychologically fucked up and that stays with them for life. Fortunately enough for me, that hasn't been the case. You know, I made those stupid decisions and upon stopping, I didn't end up, you know, fucked in the head or with any of these psychological problems, but I know a fair few people who have. They've had to go to rehab, they've had a lot of issues for the rest of their lives. And if you had told me back in December of 2020 when this whole story unfolded, that it would be the same 2.5 years later that would influence me to make hands down the dumbest decision of my life, you know, being a man half to death and getting in a long court case, you know, getting arrested and sentenced at 15 years old, I would have said like, shut up, you're full of shit, that's not gonna happen, you're just making stuff up so that I don't do it. And I feel like a lot of people who watch these videos, some do genuinely take things away from it, but others just think I'm bullshitting, I'm making stuff up, that it's just a scare tactic to try and convince you away from drugs. It's not that at all. I speak from real experience. I understand, like I say, some people do it, they never experience any of these negative psychological effects, but most do. Most make stupid decisions. I'm not saying don't enjoy yourself as a teenager. Don't be a fucking teenager, because that's exactly what you are. But do it in a responsible manner, because I know, at least for me, when I look back at my teenage years, the large majority of the memories which I deem to be good memories are ones that are me completely sober. You know, starting a fan page for my mate's legs in school, doing stupid shit in food tech, throwing eggs across the classroom. Just being a fuckwit at school, all right? It's a bit degenerate, but it's nowhere near as bad as engaging in all this dumb shit which feels good in the moment and just ends up fucking your life later on. It sounds so logical talking about it now, but I feel like to most young men and women it isn't. You know, you see it as a bit of fun, you get into it, you realize that it's not actually good for your mental health and it fucks you up in many ways, but it's harder to get out of it once you are in it. And I understand that firsthand. But with that said, bro, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you walk away with a fresh perspective, perhaps a bit of valuable insight. And before I wrap it up, I just want to say thank you to every single one of you who have subscribed. I've just had my absolute best month on YouTube. Crazy amount of views, crazy amount of subscribers gained. And I owe it all to you guys. All the glory goes to God. I'm just super grateful for every single one of you. And I just thought I absolutely had to mention that, because it just does not feel real to be in the position I'm in. And like I said, I owe a lot of that to you guys. 74,000 subscribers. We're approaching 100,000. Let's try and get there before the end of the year. But with that said, I will see you in the next one. Hit the sub button so we can get to that 100K. Smash the fucking like. And as always, stay grounded, my G. It is November of 2025, and I've just woken up in a hospital bed, experiencing the most amount of pain that I've ever felt in my entire life. I hear a nurse to the right of me say, "Give him some morphine." Following this, I fall back to sleep, occasionally hearing the same nurse remind me to keep breathing. 2 hours later, I find myself high on ketamine and fentanyl in the emergency care unit, seizing up with 20 doctors surrounding me, unsure of what's going on with my body. But to make this situation even make sense and not sound like some shit straight out of a movie, let's rewind to the very beginning of this story. It is February of 2022. I'm 14 years old and I'm at the gym training one Friday night when I get this burning sensation in my chest and the back of my throat. Now at the time, I'd never felt this, whatever it was, before. The best way I could describe it at the time was it felt like boiling rocks were curdling in the back of my throat and in my chest. But I sort of don't really think much of it. I think it must just be a result of training and pushing myself too hard in the gym. Maybe I'm coming down with something. Anyhow, I finish up at the gym this night. I go home, have some dinner, and I'd say about 10 minutes after eating dinner, this feeling that I'd just been experiencing at the gym an hour ago comes back, only this time it's even worse than it had been at the gym. It just feels like there is boiling lava in the back of my throat, and there's nothing that I can really do to get rid of it. But I think to myself, once again, I must just be getting sick. I'll go to bed, I'll sleep off whatever this is. So I brush my teeth, hop into bed, and I'm laying there scrolling on TikTok when I realize I'm gonna be sick. Like I need to run to the toilet right now to vomit. So I do exactly that, run to the bathroom and spew in the toilet. And as I'm sitting there with my head in the toilet bowl, I understand that there has to be something wrong with me medically right now, but I can't quite put my finger on exactly what it is. So I go back to bed like 10 minutes later, and I do manage to get to sleep without too much trouble. But over the next couple of weeks, these symptoms continue to persist. Not only do they persist, they start to get worse. And so after probably 3 weeks of having this disgusting feeling in my throat, I go to my parents one day and I tell them about these symptoms that I've been experiencing. I have no idea what they could be, of course, but as I'm explaining what I've been feeling to my parents, my dad tells me that it sounds like it could be acid reflux, but he'd be very surprised if I was getting that at my age, because it's typically something older people get, right? It's like an old person medical problem. But long story short, both of my parents just tell me to monitor it, make sure if I'm eating certain foods to take note of which foods they are. You can start to cancel those foods out of your diet if it is acid reflux, right? But over the next couple of weeks, something really strange happens. Not only do the symptoms get worse, but new ones start to arise. I'm having trouble swallowing my food. I can't swallow my own spit anymore. Like it's actually uncomfortable to swallow my spit. And so I've got a spit bucket in my room, like I'm literally spitting in a bucket whilst I'm laying there in bed. I'd spit on the ground everywhere at school. And after a couple of months of experiencing these symptoms, I would find myself violently vomiting in the toilet at the gym every single day. Of course, once again, at this point, I still have no idea what it could be. We finally get 3 months into having experienced whatever this problem was. And I go to my mum to have a conversation about it one day, ask her if she can book me a doctor's appointment because something clearly isn't right here. And as I'm talking to her about it, she tells me that it could potentially be something known as a Helicobacter bacteria, which is something that my brother had had a few years before. It had only just crossed her mind. Yo brother, what's cracking? I'll let you get back to the story in just a second, but first I want to tell you about Hectic Threads. If you're a fan of the channel, you've been supporting me for quite some time, and you want to represent the brand and what we're doing here, click the link in the description. That'll take you to hecticthreads.com, which is my clothing brand. Cop yourself a hood just in time for winter. I'll let you get back to the story, Sonny Jim. So she books me in for the doctors the following week. I actually get a test done for this bacteria, and of course, to no one's surprise, it comes back positive. To sum it up, doctor puts me on a dose of antibiotics, which I actually end up being allergic to, but I do get through the full course of them, and my symptoms go away for a very, very short while. Around 2 weeks after finishing the course of antibiotics, these symptoms come back once again. Only this time, we can't put it down to that bacteria, okay, because it's gone. I'm still experiencing the same problems that I was when I had the bacteria, only this time I don't. So of course, immediately I go to my parents and tell them what's going on, that I'm experiencing these same issues that I was before. And they tell me it's likely just my gut readjusting to being normal again. And I think, okay, yeah, that sounds about right. But over the next couple of months, it starts getting even worse. That spit bucket that I mentioned earlier came back, and literally at the end of every single day, I was having to empty it in the toilet because it would be so full. I'm talking there would be like half a litre of spit in this bucket every single day. Those who knew me at school at the time knew me as the guy who would spit on the floor in the classroom, and I felt like an absolute grub. I was a grub, but there was nothing that I could do about it, and we still have zero fuck of a clue what's going on with me. But I carry out the rest of the year as normally as I possibly can. I do my best to sort of minimize the symptoms through taking like Nexium and stuff, which is like acid reflux medication, although it didn't really help, which you're gonna find out why in a second. We get all the way to the start of 2023, the school holidays. I'm sitting with my dad one day having lunch, and we start talking about these symptoms that I've now been experiencing for the past year. I say to him, like, it's not normal for a 15-year-old boy to feel this way. It isn't normal to have a spit bucket in your room. And of course he agrees with me, but that's when he suggests to me that it could potentially be something known as a hiatus hernia, which is essentially where the opening and closing of your stomach, like between your stomach and your esophagus, is herniated, and that results in it being open all the time, which allows your stomach acid to come up into your esophagus. But he then proceeds to tell me it would be very, very unlikely for me to have this as young as what I am. But as soon as he says that, I actually feel relieved, because now I have somewhat of an idea as to what it could potentially be. Righto, so around 2 months go by from this point, and it gets to April of the same year. I've just gotten home from the gym one day when I see a letter on the kitchen counter addressed to me. I open it up, and it's a letter from a surgeon that I'd actually seen a year prior, stating that I needed to go in for an operation where they put a camera into my stomach and see what's going on with me. I had no idea about this. My mum must have organised it, right? So we fast forward 2 weeks later, I go in for this operation, whatever you want to call it. They put me under anaesthetic, shove a camera down my throat. And after this, they discover that I have a hiatus hernia the size of a golf ball, right? So my stomach is herniated into my chest, and it's about that big. This explains all of the pain and discomfort that I've been going through these past couple of years. But the surgeons were just as shocked as what I was, because this is not normal for a 15-year-old boy to have this. Better yet, it's not normal for him to have had it since he was 14 years old. So what followed over the next couple of months was constant checkups with doctors and specialists, denying me surgery because I was going to need surgery in order to be able to fix this, but because I was so young, none of the specialists wanted to operate on me because it was such a high risk operation, right? We get into June of the same year, and I start working full time in a very dusty environment, a factory, right? Which is pretty hard on my respiratory system, you know, like the hernia makes it a bit more difficult to breathe. And I start getting really, really bad skin, like worse than it had ever been before, like cystic acne, which only got worse in the months to come. And I remember feeling at the time like I just could not catch a break. I was the hardest worker, the most heavy hustler out of all of my friends, yet somehow I was still seemingly the most chopped and unlucky one of them all. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, why me? You know, like a sort of a victim mentality, and thinking of it more as something that was happening to me. I remember sitting in my room one day and just thinking, like, why the fuck do I have all of these issues? I'm eating right, I'm going to the gym, I'm getting plenty of sleep, I'm taking care of my skin, I'm not going out partying like everyone else my age, and yet I look like complete shit. I'm literally the human embodiment of a fucking testicle. But it gets into 2024, and I stop feeling bad for myself. I have this massive mindset shift where I sort of understand everything that is happening to me now is actually happening for me and shaping me into the man that I need to be stronger and more resilient, because I now understand that no one ever grew in a comfort zone or staying the exact way that they were. Change doesn't happen with familiarity, it happens in uncomfortable circumstances. And this is sort of like the mantra that I'm repeating in my mind. So the start of the year is pretty normal. But we get into April of 2024, and my mum somehow has lined up a specialist appointment with like the highest regarded specialist in my town. So we go into his office one day, sit down, have a meeting, and pretty much the conclusion is he's gonna send me to the town over to have a tube shoved into my nose, down my throat and into my stomach to monitor acid activity and work out if I actually need surgery or not. So following this, he gets the results back and I go in for a follow-up appointment at the very end of April. We get into his office, he sits me down, and he starts talking to me about what the results were. He says, yes, you've got the hernia, you're definitely gonna need surgery, it's XYZ size. And that's when he says to me, I'm gonna put you on a waiting list so that you can go in for the operation in 12 months' time. And hearing that, bro, I sort of have to check that I'm hearing him right, because for the past couple of years, it's just been constant no's, constant rejections, people telling me that they're not gonna do it, it's too high risk. And so I say to him, you mean you're gonna put me on a waiting list to have the surgery in 12 months? And he says, that's correct. I'm sitting there with a straight face, but in my mind, I'm just jumping up and down with excitement. I'm thinking like, fuck yes, finally, this bullshit that I've been struggling with for like the past 3 years is finally about to be over. So over the next 12 months, I stay focused, I stay in a very positive mindset. I actually quit my job and start doing YouTube full time. And I managed to build my physique to be the biggest it has ever been in my entire life. But in the back of my mind, I understand that come surgery, I'm gonna lose everything that I've been building these past couple of years, because I would have to have so much time off. I wouldn't be able to eat. I wouldn't be able to train. I would literally be on a liquid diet for like 8 weeks. But I just push those thoughts down. I think, yeah, that's later. That's not now. Just worry about building yourself now. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But finally, we get to October of 2025, right? So like 6 months ago. And I receive yet another letter in the mail telling me that I'm going to be going in for surgery to have this hernia operated on the 11th of November, so about a month's time from this point. Now, in a way, I was sort of relieved reading this letter, but I understand that after surgery, I'm gonna have to learn to extract my self-worth from something that isn't so superficial, right? Because all of this time, I've been building myself up and having this ego about me, getting my self-worth from my physique and what I've been building in the gym. But come surgery, all of that's gonna be stripped away, and I'm literally going to be watching my body deteriorate at a rapid rate every single day. But I look at this in a more positive way, because I understand that that means I'm gonna have to extract it from something else, some other endeavor of fulfillment in my life that isn't so superficial. So, it gets to the 11th of November, I wake up, put on my clothes, and my mum drives me down to the hospital to have my surgery done. We get into hospital, I sign a few forms, and I'm sitting there in the waiting room just sort of going through all of the thoughts in my mind about how different life's gonna be after surgery. It'll suck for a little bit, but long term, the quality of life is just gonna be so much better, because all of these symptoms and problems I've been experiencing the past couple of years will be gone completely. Gets to around 11 a.m, I get told to get changed, put into my hospital gown. They wheel me into the operating room. I walk over to the operating table, lay on it, and the last thing I remember is a doctor looking me in the eyes and saying, see how his head wobbles around? Boom. I was out like a light. Next thing I knew, I've just woken up in a hospital bed experiencing the most agonizing pain that I've ever felt in my entire life. It literally feels like I've been stabbed repeatedly and then punched in the stomach, because, well, in a way, that's exactly what had just happened. 5 deep incisions etched into my stomach, and they'd just been moving around in there to get rid of this hernia and patch it up, right? So as soon as I wake up, I'm groaning in agonizing pain. A doctor to the left of me tells me to stop tensing my core, because that's just gonna make the pain even worse. The doctor to my right tells him to administer some morphine, and they do. But after a little while, they notice that the morphine isn't really doing much, like I'm still groaning in pain. And they decide to give me a dose of ketamine, right? And I remember as soon as they injected it, I just felt at ease, felt very calm. The pain that I'd just been experiencing 5 seconds before was gone. Shortly after this, I'm transported to the palliative care unit, I believe it is. And once I get into my room, the nurse asks me if I need to go to the toilet. I tell her yes. She asks me if I need help. Of course, I tell her no, that's a little bit embarrassing, but that may have been a mistake, which we'll figure out why in a second. I go into the bathroom, lock the door, and drop my Dax, right? Get out the Tallywhacker and I start trying to piss, but it just won't seem to come out. Because of all the painkillers they've given me, it really affects your urinary tract and your ability to piss. So this task that would have usually been so simple to complete was taking so much energy. And I remember I sort of braced my core as I'm pissing, which you should not fucking do. But I finish up, I wash my hands and I go back to the hospital bed. But the second I lay back down, I just get hit with this massive wave of pain. Like, it's worse than it was when I'd initially woken up. Like, all the pain meds are now wearing off and I feel the impact of what I've just done. I start groaning just as I was before, and this time the nurses are looking at me like they can really tell something was wrong. One of the surgeons asks me if I'm allergic to anything. I tell him no, and that's when he tells me, don't freak out, but you have a huge red rash across your entire torso. So I get out my phone and I take a photo, and sure enough, there's this fucking massive rash. Like, they think I'm having an allergic reaction. And to me, this wasn't normal based on the doctor's reaction to it. But a couple minutes later, the nurses come into my room with the cannula, stick it in my arm, and they administer a dose of fentanyl. After that, everything's pretty calm. This pain does soothe itself with a lot more painkillers over the rest of the night. Have a terrible sleep in hospital, and wake up the next morning ready to go home. I get sent home that day with some very strong painkillers, and over the next week or so, I'm popping these opioids like Tic Tacs. And it didn't take long, I'd say only a couple of days, until I actually started to look forward to taking these opioids, because if you know anything about this category of drugs, they are very addictive. And because I'd started to look forward to taking them, even though I needed to take them, I started to feel bad about it. Like, I know I shouldn't be anticipating this. It's a very slippery slope. It just reminded me of when I always used to smoke when I didn't want to. It was like a coping mechanism. And although I knew I wasn't going to gain a dependency on them, I felt like shit because I was now looking forward to it. But I once again stay in a very positive headspace, reminding myself that this is literally necessary to build the life I want and to become stronger and more healthier, to finally get rid of this health issue that I've had for so long. So over the next month, I do get off the painkillers and I actually start excelling and doing really well in other areas of life. You know, financially, my YouTube channel's growing at a rapid rate. I'm having brands reach out and gaining tens of thousands of subscribers every single month. All of these tangible metrics that people would typically look at as success are coming into my life. And yet every single day that I wake up, I look in the mirror at my rapidly deteriorating body and just think to myself, holy fuck, you look like shit. And all the positive that was going on, I still somehow managed to look at the one negative thing, if you can even call it that. But I do eventually get to a point where I'm like, you know what? This is just for now and not forever. I know that once I get back into the gym, I'm gonna build it back bigger than ever before. I'm going to be better, and this time it's going to be with zero health implications, right? I'm going to be doing it healthy, okay? So finally, it gets to the 25th of December, which is of course Christmas Day, 2025. And this just so happens to be 6 weeks post-surgery, which is the date that I'm cleared to go back to the gym. So on Christmas Day, I finish up at Christmas brekkie at my nan's house. I drive to the gym. And what I found as I'm sitting there doing these really light bicep curls is that I now have a greater appreciation for training and the gym itself because of all this time that I've just had off. It's like I knew what I had been missing. But we fast forward all the way to today, which is the 14th of April, 2026. I'm now 5 months post-surgery. I've been back in the gym for 4 of those months, and I'm still much skinnier than I was before I went in for surgery, but it's okay. We're here to build back up and become the best version of ourselves with zero health issues this time. I can finally say that I'm healthy for the first time in 4 years. And what I want to drill into your mind today, bro, is everything in your life right now that you consider to be happening to you is actually happening for you. I remember back in 2023 when I was in this why me mindset, this victim mindset, feeling like shit and feeling powerless because I was in that mindset. As soon as you say why me, that gives all the power to the world and takes it away from you. But when you say for me, this thing is happening for me, that leaves you in power and gives you the ability to change, just as I did. Going into surgery, I understood it was going to be a mental slog. It was going to be difficult for me to extract self-worth from other areas of life when I've extracted it from this one thing, my physique, for so long. But after, in the time that I had off, as I said, my YouTube started to blow up and all of that sort of stuff, I started to look at it through a more positive lens. I honestly think, looking back now, I probably wouldn't have blown up in that time because I wouldn't have had anywhere near as much time to invest in my channel if I was at the gym. I would not be where I am right now if I hadn't have had this surgery and had all of the time off. So I literally would not have it any other way. Everything in your life has a positive lens to look at it through. Whether or not you deem it to be negative does not matter. There is always a positive way to look at it. And as soon as you can identify that, guess what, brother? You become the one in power, you become the one in control. Instead of, oh, why me? Why am I skinny? Why have I got bad skin? Do something to fix it, right? All of these issues I had, all of these issues are no longer existent for me because I put in the work and stopped being a victim to circumstance. I understood that I had the power to change, and so do you. God's gift to us is not doubt or fear, it's courage and conviction. Okay, now you may be sitting here saying, oh, this guy's so full of shit, you know, that's not true. What you believe isn't what you perceive. It doesn't matter how much I believe in myself or I believe I can change, I can't and I never will. You see how far that mindset gets you, bro, because this time 4 years ago, I was broke, I was a conehead, I was skinny as fuck, I had acne all over my face, all over my body, I was in a very toxic relationship, I had nothing going for me. And there are people in far worse situations who have done far better than me. There are also people potentially like yourself who are in a better situation than what I was 4 years ago, who still haven't gotten to where you want to be because you keep allowing yourself to make these victim mentality excuses, which only leaves you powerless. Identify the thoughts that are holding you back, okay? Because there's many of them. There are so many things in your mind that limit your ability to do whatever it is that you want to do. If you're thinking, okay, well, my skin's fucked, I can never change it, it's my genetics, I am living proof that you can change it. It's not your genetics. You can do things to become better. Anything you put your mind to, you can do. When I started this channel, everyone called me cringe. Maybe some do still call me cringe, but guess what? I'm fucking winning 132K today on YouTube. And what? Do I care that they call me cringe? No, because I'm here winning. Anything that you put your mind to, you can do. Trust me on that, brother. You are capable of so much more than you know. I was just some bald-headed 16-year-old when I started this channel, full of optimism, but surrounded by skeptics, and yet I still made it work. So whatever it is that you want to do, whatever the struggle is that you're going through right now, you can get past it and become the person that you want to be. Now, you can either listen to me right now or continue thinking the exact way that you've thought for years and see how far that gets you. Hope you enjoyed this video, found some sort of value in it. I will see you in the next one. Hit the sub button, smash the like, and as always, stay grinding, my G. From a very young age, I started making decisions that most would deem to be the actions of a retard, and many of which were influenced by a long list of various different substances. But in all these stupid decisions, I've walked away with a ton of wild and loose stories. And today I'm going to rank every single drug that I've ever done in chronological order, along with some of the wildest stories that I've got from each. So it all starts out on a cold afternoon in wintertime of 2016. I'm 9 years old, and I'm laying on my bed feeling super bored. So I walk down the hallway thinking I'm gonna go into my brother's room and hang out with him for a little bit. But I knock on the door, no answer. I knock again, doesn't respond. So this is when I take it upon myself to walk into his room, and I see that my brother isn't anywhere to be seen. He's not in his room, the door's closed. I think, all right, I'll check a couple of other rooms. He could be in the lounge room. So I walk down there, he's not there, not in the kitchen. And so I think, oh yeah, he'll be outside, he'll be at the back doing something. Sure enough, I go into the laundry, exit out the laundry door, and this is when I see my eldest brother on the back veranda inhaling smoke out of something that I've never seen before. So I walk up to him and he sees me and he sort of like puts it away frantically. And I say, Scott, what are you doing? And he just straight out tells me, oh, I'm smoking. Despite there being a 4-year age gap between us, right? I'm 9 years old at the time, he's 13. I guess he trusts me enough not to tell mum and dad, but to spare you all the boring details, I ask him on this afternoon if I can have some, but he tells me no, because he doesn't have enough, and even if he did, I'm too young to be doing it. But we fast forward to a week later, I'm laying on my bed once again, bored as shit after school one Friday afternoon, when Scott comes into my room, clearly very impaired at this point, and he says, "Luke, come out the back, you're gonna smoke." And I'm just getting super excited. I'm thinking, fuck yeah, because I actually want to do this. So we start walking out the back, and we know that we don't have a whole lot of time because my parents had left to get pizza 10 minutes before, and the pizza shop was only 10 minutes away, which meant they would be back in 10 minutes. Scott and I walk all the way up the back to where the shipping containers are, like out the back of my property, where this sort of nature reserve is, right? And he pulls out the billy, puts it up to my mouth, lights it up. Like I literally just smoked for the very first time at 9 years old. So anyhow, he has one, we pack up and we quickly start heading back inside. But I remember just as we were about to walk back into the yard, like to go back into our house, right? We see mum and dad getting out of the car with the pizzas and starting to walk inside. So Scott, somehow thinking on his feet despite being very stoned, tosses the bomb that he's got in his hand into the dog kennel that's nearby, and somehow by the grace of God we don't get caught. Anyhow, we eat the pizzas. Not long after this we go inside, and honestly, given that I was so young, I can't really recount super well how exactly I felt, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been any different to how I felt when I was older. This was my first look into the vast world of mind-altering substances. We fast forward to September of 2019. I'm now 12 years old, and my middle brother, Jake, has arranged for his mate Weber to come around to our house, and they're gonna have like a little camp out in the paddock over there, you know, on the nature reserve, and they're gonna light a fire. They're just gonna camp out in the tent, right? And he's agreed that I can come and hang out with them for the night, okay? Not a good idea. Anyhow, we get out there on this particular night, and the boys tell me that they've got a couple of bottles of rum, and they tell me that I can have a bit. So anyhow, they pour me like the littlest cup, and after a couple of these, I can feel that I'm intoxicated. I'd never been drunk before up until this point in my life, and I'm acting like a complete fuckwit. They had the green waste bin out there, and I was like punching on with it. Apparently I punched Weber in the face, which I can't actually remember, but I was just acting like you would expect a 12-year-old to act when he's drunk, like an absolute fuckwit. But I remember the way that I described being drunk at the time was, it felt like I was floating, obviously, because I'd never done this before. And I remember telling my mate Crocker the next day, "Oh yeah, I got drunk last night and it felt like I was floating," and I was describing all of the ways that I felt to him. But from this point, I don't try anything new until July of 2020. So by this point, I'm 13 years old. It's a Thursday afternoon, and I've just bought an acid tab off of this year 9 kid from school. So I'm in grade 7 at the time. Anyhow, the plan for taking this was I was going to take it the next night, the Friday, because from the research that I had done on it, I knew I was going to be awake all night. Like, you couldn't sleep on acid during the trip. But I get home on this night, and all I can think about is taking the tab right then and there. Like, I did not want to have to wait until the next night. So anyhow, it gets to 9:30 p.m. I decide I'm gonna say goodnight to my parents and take the tab. So I do exactly that. I say goodnight, mum and dad, I'm going to sleep. Go to my room, turn off the lights and turn on the LEDs. Put the tab in my mouth and I wait a bit. Around half an hour goes by. So by this point it's about 10 p.m. and I don't feel a thing. I'm looking around, I'm thinking, this has just sold me a bum ass tab. It has literally done nothing. I guarantee you he's just sold me a piece of cardboard. But legit 10 minutes after having this thought, boom, it hits me all at once. I'm looking around, I'm seeing colors so much more vividly. Everything seems to be moving. I'm seeing shit that I've never seen before. This is an experience like no other. My mood's elevating, I feel very at peace. And as I get further and further into the trip, I start looking around at objects that wouldn't usually be interesting to me, but I'm looking at them very closely and like moving my hand along them, seeing them move with my hand. And I remember there was like this drawing that I'd done. It was like Rick from Rick and Morty. And I was just looking at it, watching the colors change with the LEDs as I moved my hand along it. And I remember with every thought that would pop into my mind, a seemingly more intelligent one would come straight after that. Of course, that wouldn't have been the case. But to spare you the rest of the details, because I have done a whole video on this before, I ended up going to bed at about 4 a.m. on this particular night. So I think it goes without saying the next day at school was pretty rocky. I wasn't feeling too good. It has come to my attention that 86% of you who watch this channel are not subscribed, which leads me to asking the question, what the fuck are you doing? You could be watching these videos every single week that I upload, but still somehow not realize that you're not subscribed. So please do me a favor, check right now. It helps me so much because every single one of you who are subscribed are the ones who are making these videos possible week to week. I'll let you get back to the story, son. And from this point, I actually try a couple of times, but it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't do anything to me. This same guy who had sold me and it just didn't do shit until it gets to December of the same year, okay? To spare you the details, because I have done a full story on this particular situation before, I buy some extremely potent stuff off a different guy, and the original plan for this night was for my mate Donnie to come around to my house. We're going to smoke in the tent, just have a chill night. But once we bought this stuff, we decided we were going to take it, and we weren't going to wait until my parents went to sleep. It gets to about 8 p.m. of that same night, and we decided that we're going to eat 2 caps each, right? Which is pretty much just like 0.2 of a gram of MDMA each, right? And once we'd taken it, I remember thinking it'd take like 45 minutes to an hour to hit us. Literally 20, 30 minutes after taking it, both of us had really started to elevate, and I knew it was time to go out to the tent. So we get pillows and blankets and stuff. We take them out to the tent, and we're just blasting music. I remember about 45 minutes after taking it, I just started to feel super euphoric. I was starting to peak, and this was a feeling that I literally never felt before. I could not compare it to anything at the time. This was like an unmatched state of dopamine, which would become a slight issue over the next couple of years. But I think I've done enough stories on this particular drug, so I'm gonna spare you the yap for today. We get into March of 2021. By this point, I'm in grade 8. I'm still 13 years old though, and I've obviously started in a new class. Given that I'm now in a new class, I've got a whole heap of new classmates. There's this one lad in my class who we'll call Daz, that has severe ADHD. And he would bring his ADHD medication to school every day, but contrary to what most schools do, where, you know, they'll hold the medication up at the office, the student will go to the office and get it when they need it. This kid would just bring full fucking packs of the stuff to school. And it just so happened that the medication he was prescribed for his ADHD was an extreme psychiatric drug known as Ritalin, which I guess is okay for people with ADHD. I mean, it fucks them up in many different ways, but when you give it to someone who doesn't have ADHD, it gives them this extreme high that's similar to caffeine, similar to MDMA, sort of like a mix between the two. And I remember one day, Daz brings him into class and he just fucking hated taking them, right? He says they make him feel like shit. He can't sleep, he can't eat when he takes them. And so he would just hand them out like Tic Tacs. I remember he gave a couple to my mates. He gave one to my girlfriend at the time. And he asked me if I want some. I say, fuck yeah. Sure enough, he rips off like 4 off the pack, off the sheet, right? And he hands them to me. I end up dropping 3 on this day. And about an hour later, I'm just fucking locked in. I'm sitting there looking at my page, wide awake. My pupils are dilated. I'm just feeling laser focused on this shit. I'm literally sweating bullets though. What I would compare it to is like when you're coming up on MMA, you feel very floaty, very energized, very alert, but you don't really go past that stage. You sort of just stay there and it's like sustained for hours. I finished school on this day and I actually go to the gym with my mates Donnie and Crocker that night and I give them some. And we were just fucking pumping it. We didn't sleep at all on this particular night. I remember being in the gym pumping the weights. I didn't feel strong. It just felt like my heart was going to explode and I didn't want to do anything else except just push the weight. Anyhow, we fast forward all the way to March of 2022, so about a year later. I'm 14 years old by this point and I've organised to stay at Crocker's house for the night. But we weren't really going to do anything. We were just going to sit there and play Minecraft, maybe smoke a little bit of weed. But I remember as we're playing Minecraft, I decided to pause the game, go onto my phone and just check my Snapchats, right? And as I'm checking them, I start tapping through Snapchat stories. And I see that this dude has put on his private story that he's got c***. Now me being the dumb little fucker that I was, I turn to Crocker and I say, you want to get some c*** tonight? I know you don't have the money, but you can pay me back. Of course, he's keen as fuck. We've done a bunch of dumb shit like this in the past. Nothing's going to stop us from doing this on this night. Anyhow, to spare you the details, because once again, I've done a full video on this before, but just for viewers who haven't seen that, Crocker and I wind up walking to this park that's nearby his house. We buy it off this lad who probably would have been like 21, 22 at the time, and we walk back to Crocker's house. We end up sipping it later this night. We have a bit at his house, then we take the rest to the gym, pump it there. And honestly, I was never a fan. The way I describe it is just like a super high dose of caffeine. And the worst part for me was the come down. I remember just feeling like such shit. I wanted more, but I couldn't have more. Even though it didn't feel that good, I felt like shit when I didn't have it. And so it wasn't for me. So from that point, I never did it again. It wasn't something I could see myself wanting to do it again. You know, $3.50 for something that literally just felt like taking a high dose of pre-workout. Anyhow, a few weeks after doing, I'm staying up late one night, once again playing Minecraft. And I remember that I bought these pills a couple days before from this older lad that I knew that are known as Lyrica, right? Which is pretty much just like Xanax on steroids. They fuck you up. So I'll go over to my cupboard, I take one out of the pack, pop it in my mouth, and literally an hour later, I just feel like a complete zombie. And let me just tell you, bro, these things proper fuck you up. I'm gonna say first and foremost, don't go out and try any drug that I've mentioned in this video, but especially this one. However, the best way I can describe them is very comparable to that of an extremely strong opioid. But in keeping with that theme, the next drug on the list also happens to be opioids. In this case, it's tapentadol. I remember at the start of 2024, I think it was actually about May, so like halfway through, I had 7 teeth ripped out of my head and my face was extremely swollen, like I was in severe pain. So I was prescribed opioids, tapentadol, and I was taking these things like Tic Tacs every single day. And let me just tell you, there is a reason they give you these things for a very limited amount of time, because they are extremely addicting. After 2 to 3 days of taking them, 3, 4, 5 times a day, you become very, I won't say reliant, but you become very eager to do them. And most of you already know if you watched my surgery video that did quite well. Once I had my hernia operated on, I was prescribed these things for like 2 weeks, and I did not feel good at all because I was taking them every single day. It just takes it out of you. You feel fucked all the time. I was constantly tired. I could never think straight, because I was taking like 5 of these very strong opioids every single day. But these last 2 I'm actually gonna pair together because I took them virtually in the same hour at the hospital. So after I'd got out of surgery for my hernia, I was in extreme pain, and all the painkillers they were giving me weren't working at all. So one of the nurses takes it upon themselves to inject me with ketamine. Now, I'd never done this in the past. I know a lot of people snort it, do it recreationally, all that sort of thing. Wasn't ever something that appealed to me, but when they injected it into me at the hospital, as soon as they did, they were describing what I should be feeling, and that was exactly what I was feeling. Felt like I was drunk, very floaty, very calm. I was seeing things comparable to a come up on LSD, like it was similar to acid visuals. But it didn't last very long, and it didn't impair me too much. I guess that's because they give you a clinical dose, not a fucking recreational dose. And a short hour later, I was administered fentanyl, which didn't actually do anything. I mean, that's like one of the most lethal drugs in the world. So my guess would be they gave me an extremely low and safe dose just for, pain relief. But anyhow, that is every substance that I've ever taken. Obviously, there's a lot of abuse going on in between these stories. I haven't given you the gist of everything. That's because I want to save some stories for future videos. But if you enjoyed, hit the sub button if you have not already. Smash the like. I'll see you in the next one. Stay grinding.